Yep, you are. Okay. It's recommended that the board return to open session. We have a motion. Move. Part a second.
Second.
Mr. Bucieri.
Second.
Aye. We are in open.
Aye.
Item F is correspondence.
Just a minute, Justin, I'm writing down the time. Sorry. We have received letters from 2 employees, one requesting an extension from a previous maternity leave, and the other requesting a maternity leave of absence beginning October 5th.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kepnes. Item G is a presentation and discussion on the reopening of schools.
All right. Steve, if you would bring that up.
Very good. I'm sharing now. Okay, Chuck, whenever you're ready.
Good. All right. So one of the things that we did this week is we talked to our entire faculty in different faculty meetings to make sure that the report that I'm giving you tonight has been given to our teachers as well to start that discussion with them about some of the things that we are working on to make sure that we can get our schools open. So one of the things that I did on Wednesday, and then Vinny and Russ did, no, I did on Tuesday and Vinny and Russ did on Wednesday, was we used the term exclusively virtual, which will be our students who are online, remotely, not in school. And then hybrid learning models, which is the model where our students are in school at certain times, and of course online at other times, so that we can divide our population up. All right, next slide, Steve.
Okay.
So what we talked about, of course, last week, and what we're talking about now, is a 4-phase introduction to the school year. The first phase is our introductory phase, where we have our students in an A-B schedule in the first week because of the late start. You'll have Thursday and Friday. And then the following week, you have Labor Day on Monday, and then the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, A-B. So our teachers can get to know the students and introduce them in. One of the things that I'm hearing from our faculty, and our faculty really care about our kids and getting back and trying to be the best, but also being healthy and making sure everyone is safe and that our children are safe, is the best thing about coming back is getting to know them in case we have to go back out again. Because it's very difficult online to try to start a conversation with students when you don't have that connection with them. So for those people that are sort of pro trying to get started in school, it's that introductory period that's so important to them to get to know the students. So they're going to start in phase 1 that way. Then in phase 2, we'll move to the schedule that we really are trying to do, which is a blue gold schedule. Monday and Tuesday is blue, Thursday and Friday is gold, and Wednesday, the first couple of weeks, is virtual. We'll have only 2 virtual Wednesdays because we have the Yom Kippur holiday on a Monday, and therefore we'll have the Tuesday, Wednesday blue, and Thursday, Friday gold. We have started to divide our students up into those different cohorts. It's important to try to keep them separate for the first part of the year. The families will all be blue or all be gold. So the families will be scheduled together, whatever grade level they're in. And that's a picture of 3 of our staff in Glen Meadow getting ready already. Our teachers are working diligently already to get ready for the year. And we're doing a lot of training. We're going to talk a little bit about the training in a minute that will be happening in all of August. All right, next one, Steve. This is the schedule that we showed you. This is a schedule that is presently on our website, but I wanted to make sure that everybody had this. Our transportation coordinator, Jamie Van Giltz, put this together, and we all have it in our office now to make sure that we can keep it straight. Next one, Steve. There's October, and that's when we move into phase 3, where we remove the virtual day, and now we're 3 days a week with our students, and 2 days a week with the other students, and then 2 days a week with the blue team, and 3 days a week with the gold team. We tried to keep the days consistent on the Thursday and Friday and Monday and Tuesday for parents who are setting up their work schedule for this. All right, then we move into phase 3 and 4. Phase 3, of course, is the end here, and then phase 4, we start with having the students in 5 days a week and trying to go the full day. For those people that have concerns about why we're only doing 4 hours, really the problem is lunches. We've been struggling with this since the beginning. Most school districts are struggling with this. What to do about lunches? No one really has it figured out. But we figured if we can get through the first marking period and make sure that our students are safe and secure, we will start to work out ways to adjust the schedule so that we can fit lunches in and we can have students eating safely. But of course, this is a hope, not a promise. All right, next slide. Now, here are the latest numbers, and this is as of 4 o'clock this afternoon. Presently, 1,668 students have responded online, or their parents have responded online for them, for online learning versus in-person learning. 415 of those students, of the 1,600, are choosing to be exclusively virtual. Choosing to be exclusively virtual. So we basically have about half of our population who is reporting out that they are going to go, 415 of half of our population is going to be exclusively virtual. If we double this number or get close to it, we're talking about possibly in the end, having as many as 800 or 850 students being exclusively virtual, taking them out of the basic 3,100 students that we have. Interestingly enough, and we'll continue to talk about this number, we do have new students signing into the school district. We're waiting for Karen Dowd to return from her vacation. She'll be onboarding a couple of those students, but the number could be as high as 80. So what's that a direct result of? Home sales. So while all this is going on, there are people in the home sale business and people buying and selling who are doing amazing things. Some people are selling and buying that are sitting right here. All right, next slide, please. So what does that bring our numbers down to? Now remember, the high school population is somewhere around 980, and with the students removed, we're down around 425 for a blue day, or 425 for a gold day, separating our students and making sure that there's less students in the building. Glen Meadow will be down to 269. Lounsbury Hollow, which has the highest percentage of students who are going exclusively virtual, will be 180. Rolling Hills, 159. And Cedar Mountain is down, 184. So we're basically, with this new process, dividing the students, taking out the students who are going exclusively virtual, and this is the hybrid learning model students and their numbers. So if parents are watching and they're worried about students being too close together, these numbers are terrific about keeping the population as small as possible to keep them safe. All right, next slide, Steve. There was some discussion about what would be a virtual learning experience versus what would be a hybrid learning experience for our students. So I wanted to first talk about the virtual learner. Students who are in K through 5 will basically be in a cohort of online virtual exclusive students. So let's say we're in grade level 5. And in grade level 5, we have 90 students out of 300 that are going exclusively virtual. What would then happen is we would then move their schedule, move a teacher with them or 2 teachers with them. They would create a house or 2 houses, and that would be their virtual experience. So they're going to be responsible to the 2 teachers that are going to run the house. We're still working on the specials to make sure they get them as well. Some of them may come into the classroom virtually for the music. Others may actually have a teacher that's working with them. So in the elementary level, it basically is a moving of their schedule. When we get to Glen Meadow, that's what Ms. Gebhardt is working with presently. And she's working diligently with her staff to try to make this happen, so that there are times where students would have a teacher dedicated to them for the virtual learning, but other times they will be coming into the classroom or be the responsibility of the classroom teacher who is part of the hybrid learning model. Once you get to the high school, we have a certification issue. If someone, say, teaches an advanced math course or physics, one of the ones we always talk about, or graphic design or whatever, the truth of the matter is it's very hard to do that kind of moving all the students out and having a teacher assigned to them. Matter of fact, it's impossible. So what we're going to have to do with that is we want our students to be on the roster of the teacher in the classroom. And we want the teachers to be making sure that they're using Schoology, recording flipped lessons or working with scripted lessons or doing Screencastify lessons. In other words, what we want is an experience where the teacher is teaching and the student who is virtual can either be part of the classroom or, probably more importantly, see a recorded lesson of that class so that they're working asynchronously as opposed to synchronously. They can get into the class if our teachers are able to do that, and there is concern amongst our staff, and they are working diligently on the process of all of this because we have to work on the technical pieces of Screencastify or Zoom or working with Schoology where they can record lessons. But the idea of recording them is they're there permanently for the student when they need them, and the teacher has taught the lesson. We do not want our staff to have to double teach. We do not want our staff to have to do online teaching and in-class teaching if we can make sure that the process can be a confluence of the two. Okay, next slide. High school and Glen Meadow teachers will be teaching in classrooms and posting lessons in Schoology. High school and Glen Meadow hybrid learning students on virtual learning days will be responsible for checking in and virtually watching any lesson as they are posted, as well as doing the work in Schoology in accordance with the teacher's classroom expectations. We have great expectations for our virtual learners this year. There will be no pass-fail. Our students will get the grades that they earn. So therefore, it is a much more demanding model. All right, next slide. Students at high school in Glen Meadow who are exclusively virtual learners will keep their schedules and be part of the teacher's roster because they have the opportunity during the year to return. That's a big piece. Many of our parents have asked about, can they return into the classes? Well, yes, if they're part of that roster. So these students are part of the teacher's class and be responsible for the work assigned and for virtually watching all lessons that are posted, as well as doing the work in Schoology in accordance with the teacher's classroom expectations. These are our virtual learners. These are the expectations that they will be responsible for their education. Next one, Steve. I've lost Steve. Thank you. In grades K through 5, students who choose exclusive virtual learning will be assigned to virtual teachers. These teachers will have classes of exclusively virtual students during the school days, present their lessons in Schoology using a wide variety of online technology. Students will be able to see their teacher, work with their teacher live, and also be responsible for all the work that is assigned in that class. And we're hoping to have people who are working very hard this summer to be stipended folks who will be working in the afternoon with our folks who are teaching these classes to make sure they use the very best and latest technology. Good, next slide. All students, whether exclusively virtual or hybrid learners, are required to check in on virtual Wednesdays. There's only 2 of them. There's only 2 virtual Wednesdays. Office hours will be kept by our teachers and they will be making sure that their students are doing well. Next one. There it is. This is one of the big questions. There'll be no pass-fail. All virtual students will receive grades. I think that was a concern last year for some of our folks. If an exclusively virtual student is on a teacher's roster, it is the student's responsibility to check into Schoology and see the teacher's live or recorded lessons and to do the work that the teacher posts. The teacher will be responsible for all the students on their roster. And that's what we have to work on. When we split the two teams, blue and gold, the next piece is to balance teachers' rosters. And that will take a week of work for these gentlemen and others, all of our scheduled people who are excellent, to make sure it's more balanced. We don't want Mrs. Smith's class on blue days to have 20 and on the gold days to have 5. And it's why we haven't released the teams yet and the names on what team your students are. But we can promise the parents that all your children in the house will be in the same blue or gold team. If students are in K-5 and are learning exclusively virtually online, assigned to a teacher or a team, if it's a house model, and that's what we're hoping. We're hoping to have 2 teachers in 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, and 2nd grade working with the team, like the house model they have at school. All right, next slide. This is the big difference that I've been talking about. There are people like Tara Holdred and others who've been working all summer, and they're ready to help our staff. So these folks have worked throughout our district. There'll be online resources for all our teachers. There'll be blended learning specialists. They'll also be releasing classes. I have a list. I think we're going to release it tomorrow of all the classes that we're offering starting August 5th for our teachers. And they're all online and they're all virtual. And we will make sure that everybody is comfortable with doing things online as well as videos. Because truth of the matter is, we could go out at any moment. We could have an outbreak and we'd be closed again. So therefore, we have to make sure that we're ready to be virtual. There'll be 3 of these specialists at the high school, and they'll be working with our high school staff. 2 of these specialists will be at Glen Meadow, 1 at Lounsbury, 1 at Rolling Hills, and 1 at Cedar Mountain. And they'll be working with our staff to make sure that their technological online presence, their video presence in a child's life will be strong with such things as Zoom, Flipgrid, Screencastify, Schoology, and others. Matter of fact, I heard about another one today that I learned through a BER episode that I saw. Thanks, Matt. All right, next one, Steve. Online best practices. This is the teacher training that we're talking about. Starting on August 5th, blended learning in the hybrid classroom. We'll offer it in the Janet will offer it in the morning and the evening for working parents. August 6th, blended learning for student engagement. Dr. Chris Tenkin from Seton Hall will be speaking, and of course, the last time we had him, he was excellent. August 11th, hybrid workflow models in Schoology. August 13th, tools of the trade part 1, video options. August 18th, assignment options. August 20th, tools of the trade. And we have a whole nother list of programs that we're going to offer that our teachers are teaching other teachers and volunteering to help out. So August is going to be loaded with professional development for our staff to make sure that we get the video and also the technology piece that we need for the hybrid learning, for the true virtual learning, exclusive virtual learning, and of course, in case we have to go out again. All right, next one. There are parents still making a decision. So I'm talking to the parents at home if they're listening. There are people that are still saying, I'm not sure. I want my child to be safe. I want him to have the best possible education. And they're saying, I'm not sure which model will work for them or work for me as a parent. If you're making a decision about health and safety, understood completely. If you're still thinking about the possibility of sending a child to school, I thought I'd put this together. And again, this is not suggestions and this is not academic truths. It's just what we've noticed. When you talk about someone who has been successful with virtual learning, and believe me, I'll give you an example. On the day before Mother's Day, I ran into a local florist in town, and I ran into a couple people buying flowers. And they were raving about online learning. Now, that's not what you always hear. But it worked beautifully for their children because that just seemed to be a better model for them. I've run into the AMP or the ACME, and there's people that hate it. So I wanted everybody to know that there are some things that we've noticed about kids who love virtual learning. One of them is they tend to be self-starters. Another is they seem to be motivated to learn, intellectually curious. In other words, they like exploring things. They like going through things. They tend to be independent. They aren't worried about the socialization process as much as I can get this done and have my afternoons to do what I want to do. Or I can get this done and I can build something in the afternoon, or I can work on something in the afternoon. They're very comfortable with virtual connections. They live, if you will, online. Then, here's what we see about our other students. Students who are hybrid learners who want to be in school is they're missing in-person socialization. They miss their friends. They miss connections with teachers. They love an active, fluid environment. They love the talk that happens in school. They love the discussions. They love bouncing ideas back and forth. They love being with each other and learning from each other. They need the engagement with classmates. How many of us have heard of students who struggled with online learning because they felt isolated? Immediate and consistent in-person feedback. I want the teacher to say, good job, or you can do better, or stop doing that. And the truth of the matter is that's not what they're going to get online. And finally, a structured schedule. There are some people that love to have a structured schedule. There's others, please don't bother me with this, 7 o'clock in the morning. Neither one is right or wrong. I just wanted to point out that there are differences in our learners. And while we might not be comfortable with one model or comfortable with the other model, the truth of the matter is we're trying to reach all of our students in a national pandemic, in which we're doing the very best we can with, I wouldn't say guidance, with direction from the government, and basically telling us that they want our schools open. All right, next slide. Masks will be worn by faculty and staff, students on the buses, in hallways, in the bathrooms, and in classrooms where social distancing is not possible. There is a recommendation to allow students to have mask breaks, and for someone like myself or the folks that are working every day, when you're wearing it 8 hours, there comes a point where you need a mask break. But the children would have to be socially distanced, and this would have to be a safe place. And of course, this is a concern because we'll be wearing masks, and it's very difficult all day long to have a mask on. We don't want to minimize that for our staff. It is a very difficult situation when you are talking all the time. All right, next slide. We are trying to meet an unrealistic expectation. We are trying to make everyone happy in a national pandemic. We can't do that. All we can do is offer what we can. The idea of offering a program that allows at least some students to come here and talk to teachers and be rewarded with adults talking to them and making them feel good. But we are also offering total safety with an exclusive virtual learning for families who are unhappy and nervous and anxious about sending their children back during a pandemic. We are going to try to provide every safety and hygiene measure that we possibly can. We've talked a lot about that. We'll be doing videos in the next couple of weeks. Mr. Vino did a video yesterday about how we're going to enter buses and leave buses and how we're going to work through buses. The busing situation, Mr. Gagliostro and Mr. Rogers and I are going to do a video tomorrow at noon, Mr. Shea?
Maybe a little after.
Oh, a little afternoon. All right. No, not Shea liking the Friday afternoon. I like that. And we'll send that video out, and we're going to be talking about some of these things. But the whole thing is this is a gradual phase and approach. If we're successful, the idea is 2 weeks in, we'll know more. 4 weeks in, we'll know more. 6 weeks in, we'll know more. Maybe by the end of the market period, we'll feel some modicum of success. So that's our plan. Okay. Questions?
Okay, you had said on Wednesdays, everybody has to check in.
Yes.
So does that mean that there's going to be no instruction on Wednesday?
No, most of the teachers probably will be doing instruction on that day as well. The reason I say that there'll be office hours is we just want to make sure that the virtual students have a chance to talk to the teacher.
And then that online best practice video, those are for the teachers.
Yes.
And are they required? I mean, it is their summertime, is it? Are they required?
No. Yes. As a matter of fact, all the messages we put out are volunteer. Although, to the staff's credit, the high school meeting, how many do we have pick the other
70.
I didn't have.
75, something like that. Yeah. Just the high school.
Oh.
But we do have the first couple of phases of school where we have our regular professional development when we welcome teachers back. And obviously there's on, on the instructional model. So for those who don't have the opportunity to do it in August, we'll be able to provide some support those first couple of days in September, just like we did every year.
Tech Camp and Tech Academy are always well attended at the end of the year, but they're voluntary as well.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes.
on day one for blue team,
Yes,
what is the gold team doing?
they're home. They're home.
Doing?
They can check in. They'll be able to see the teacher and hear what she has to say. But they're home.
And the virtual only?
Does that count as a day present for them?
Yes, yes, it does. Yes.
And the
So,
virtual,
I mean, will there be lessons? I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen.
I'm sorry, Joe, I thought you were done. I was just asking, what about the virtual only kids on those 2 days? Will they have work to do? Will they be?
Yes. They will be coming in the first day too, virtually, and the teachers who have them on their roster are responsible to them as well.
But you're saying that there won't be live, there won't necessarily be any kind of live engagement with the high school kids. It could just be recorded, flipped, and scripted. Like there's no streaming of classes or any teachers.
We have the ability to stream classes. It would be a situation where the teacher has to be comfortable with being filmed, but they could do a live screen of their smart board and talk through the lesson, and the student would see the entire lesson.
So I think that's a big concern for parents, because if I knew that teachers weren't going to be comfortable with that, that would inform my decision. So when will you know the comfort level of educators on having those classes live for kids?
The more training we do in August, I would assume there'll be more comfort level. I do know that it's human nature. There will be people that are very uncomfortable being filmed in a class, but we have to talk about how important it is to have students to have access to that classroom. So if not, then things would have to be recorded and then students would see it.
So
Just Natalie, before you go on, I just meant to say at the beginning of the conversation, and I apologize for forgetting, for members of the public who are attending virtually, I don't know if we have many people online tonight or commenting at the moment. If you do have comments that are coming through and you will want those read into the record during the public comment section, we're just going to ask that you wait until we get to the public comment section to submit those questions. So if you're submitting questions right now into the live stream chat, those won't be read into the public record. So I don't know what's going on YouTube, but if there is a lot of chatter and you want your question read, just please hold on that. Sorry, Natalie.
okay, that's fine. Yep. So I kind of piggyback on what Jennifer had said. We have our Monday, Tuesday blue, our Thursday, Friday gold. When the children are home learning those 2 days, are they learning new lessons?
Yes, they'll be with the teacher.
So when you say they'll be with the teacher, in my mind, that means they're watching the classroom.
Right.
But then you're saying that
It could be a recorded lesson. I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
There are education professionals, and this is a national discussion. This is not a Vernon discussion or a state discussion about the autonomy of a teacher's classroom and also the behavior of students in the classroom. And if we have people watching a classroom in which they feel that there's bad behavior and they're blaming the teacher for the control of behavior, that's a concern for me, because the teacher is doing the very best they can. So I think it's really important that our faculty knows that they are completely supported by us in the central office. We want the best for our students. We want our students and our faculty to be very safe. I just was talking about some of our folks who might not be able to come back. But also the idea simply is that each one of the laptops has a camera. We have the ability to do it. We have to get to the point where everybody's comfortable with that, or the vast majority of our folks are comfortable with that. And then we have to work with other people who are not on ways to do exactly what you're asking, which is that the parents want a live session with the teacher on the virtual day. And whether that can happen or it has to be recorded just to make sure that things are where they need to be, that's the discussion and all the hard work that we're doing. And that's what August is about.
And so whether recorded or not, if it's not recorded, if it is live, will the students who are virtual be able to actually participate, or are they just like voyeurs watching the class?
I think that probably depends on the amount of students in front of the teacher and their technological ability. Right now, you and I are having a conversation remotely while I'm talking live, so I'm doing exactly what would happen in the classroom there.
Right, but if I could build on that 1 second, Jen, I just want a quick question. But then it would have to be the same across the board,
Yes.
no pun intended. Because let's say you have 2 10th grade bio classes, one teacher can't allow kids virtual in and the other teacher doesn't have the technology to do that. So
And
that way,
and that becomes our job as administrators to have that discussion and say, we're really working very hard. We're doing great things. We have a colleague who's able to do this. Can we show you how this is done? Can we get to a comfort level with our folks?
I just feel like we're adding a layer to teachers that are already stressed. It's just
Absolutely.
it's such a stressful time. And then we're going to add a layer to them that they're now going to have to be taped and be mindful of that. I just, at this juncture, I don't think it's really necessary. I don't think it's fair to our faculty. That's
And that's a fair assessment.
I could build on what Kelly said. Not only is it, I don't believe it's fair to the teachers because, then you get into having been a teacher, you have your whole thing with observations, it's coming in unannounced. Like that's a whole nother thing as a teacher you have to worry about. But now I'm also looking at this as what about the confidentiality for our students? So now you have a classroom full of students, let's say the camera pans and you see who's sitting there, a child misbehaves, it's now on public video, not public per se, but it's now visible for anyone. And also the teacher then is always under a microscope, how it's handled, like you were saying.
Mhm.
And then suppose the kid, having taught high school, they talk back.
Yes.
And then you're standing there and you're like, I'm on video.
Mhm.
And now you could have a parent at home
Mhm.
with their child virtual going, oh my gosh, look at him. I didn't know. Like,
Right.
where does the confidentiality come in?
Right.
That's a big concern.
First of all, having turning cameras on the kids is not what we want. We
And you would be doing the opposite, like your camera's facing you.
Right.
So
But you're still going to
Yeah, but a kid,
Yes,
they have to get up and
absolutely.
go to the restroom. You're
Yeah.
still gonna see who's in the room.
No, there's no perfect plan. These are all legitimate concerns.
Jen, did you want to respond to
I
that?
was just going to say, what's the difference whether it's live or recorded, though? I mean, they're still seeing, that the classroom being recorded or the classroom being streamed, people at home are still seeing what's going on in the classroom.
I would assume
I don't agree with
most
you.
folks would feel more comfortable after it was recorded to view it and make sure that it was okay to send out. I'm just saying, I don't know.
The teacher would then have to record the class and then watch the video and then release the video. Like, that's more
work. It is more work.
Well, it's far better than teaching 2 or 3 different
And then
lessons.
doing it
Yeah.
online a second time.
Yeah, no, I
So then
agree.
it's like
I don't want our
triple
teachers to
teaching.
have to do.
I know, I think that we should- Yeah.
I want our students to get the education, you know what I mean? There's a balance between,
Yes, of course there is.
not having those discipline issues, on live stream for other people to see. I completely understand it, but I don't want 2 days a week that our students are not interacting, not getting new lessons, not learning new things.
So if you're talking about them building something for them, you're double teaching.
So I just wanted to, I'm hearing all the conversation around the table, and respect where everybody's coming from. And I thank Chuck, Dr. McKay, and everybody else for putting together some more information to try to inform our parents, because everybody's in a really tough spot right now, right? Parents are sitting home, and if they haven't logged into Genesis and toggled that little switch that says exclusively virtual or coming back to school, they're thinking about that right now because August 5th is next week and they've got to make a decision. At the same time, our teachers are feeling the same stress, which some of you have noticed, and I appreciate that. That's why Mr. Gagliastro, Mr. Rogers, Dr. McKay went and did faculty meetings this week to try to keep our people informed. I don't think there's a perfect answer or perfect solution, and I wish there were. My biggest concerns are several-fold. The first is that I don't want our teachers to double teach. I think that that is asking an awful lot of people who I know in the spring put their hearts and souls into online teaching like overnight, never having done it before. I know it was a challenge, but I think that Vernon faculty did a better job than anybody else that I've heard about. So I'm proud of that. The other piece is I think our children deserve to be taught, right? And that they need the engagement that Dr. McKay talked about, those side-by-sides of the exclusively virtual learner and then the hybrid person. We have to try to create a model that works for every child, and none of them are perfect, right? They're all imperfect, in their own way. So I stress to the administration, and I'm pretty sure I've said it at this table too, at the beginning of this, I talked with the administrative team about flexibility, and that the only way we'd be able to get through any kind of reopening is with adaptation, flexibility, and iterations of our plan. The reality is that when we closed in March, I will be the first one to admit it. The board remembers we were over in the Walnut Ridge Library. It was probably March 18th. And I said, this will be a couple of weeks. Shame on me, but I fully admit it. I take responsibility for that comment. I had no idea in March that we'd be sitting here in July 30th with masks on amidst a global pandemic thinking we were going to have to open school, right? So my concern is that everything is iterative, right? Everything is somewhat flexible. So what I'm hoping, and I did say it publicly last week, was that we are trying to be flexible with parents who need to make a decision. So if you choose exclusively virtual and it's not working, the option is to do the blue and gold hybrid schedule, right? And if you're not pleased with that, those are the options that we have right now on July 30th. That may change by the time we get to August. That may change by the time we get through phase 1 and phase 2. And I know that it's a challenge for everyone, but I think understanding your child and how they learn best might help you make a decision. And what we're trying to provide is what it might look like, right? And the ability to have a teacher broadcast without them being on screen, I think protects teachers a little bit. It also allows for children to observe and or to interact, which helps the learner. And on the privacy piece, I mean, I have to tell you, it is a huge issue. It's a huge concern. Even as our attorney advises us, there are no answers. We're building case law every day through all the things that we're going through right now. And that's not always a good position to be in, but it is the challenge that we're facing. So I know that my explanation doesn't make anything clearer. I just want to stress or emphasize the flexibility and the iterative process that it will continue to go through in the next couple of months. That would be my prediction.
And the virtual piece and K through 5 is a much different situation. You can move students and move teachers to work with them because you don't have the certification issues that you might have.
It's like a self-contained group.
Right.
Mr.
So
Rogers, Mr. Gagliastro, anything you want to add? I don't want to put you on. You're going to have to. I just want to make sure that your voices are heard because of all the hard work that you've done in the week.
Jen, were you asking a question?
well, I was just going to say, I feel like the high school kids are according to some of the more recent studies, they are the more vulnerable in terms of contagion. And this plan is great in terms of what, how much effort went into it. And I understand all the difficulties of it, but it really doesn't sound like it works well in the high school. I don't fault the administrators for that because, the parameters that you've been given are practically impossible to work with. But it doesn't feel like a plan that's going to work well for the virtual kids in particular. And then also even the in-person kids, 4 hours a day, 9 periods. Like, I don't know. I mean, I have, grave misgivings about it. I have to just say that.
I
And it's
appreciate
not a
that.
matter of which kind of learner you are. It's a matter of, I want, you know, my kids, my high-risk kids to be safe. And I assume that that's what a lot of parents are worried about. They're not thinking,
Absolutely. I didn't mean that about, when I talked about the different learners, I was just talking about what students were comfortable with. The first and foremost, it's about safety and parents feeling comfortable.
And we just want to chime in here that a lot of the teachers, it was March 13th that they were told that Monday you're teaching the kids virtually. And the progress that they had made, most people were like, this is going to be a couple weeks. Let's get through it. We'll return and we'll be able to get back to our normal teaching. The teachers have done a phenomenal job in updating their lessons through this whole process. If you had a student in middle school or high school, you've had a variety of different teachers and seen a couple of different approaches that they've used. So they spend endless hours live, not over the summer, but live when their kids are in class. And most of these teachers are spending 12 to 16 hours to deliver lessons that it was like the next day they were teaching, they were in class teaching online. They were learning Schoology, they were learning Screencastify, they were learning how to use Kami. Some of the teachers here were the first to recommend Kami and how to use it. So there was a big learning curve on top of all that. And what we wanted to do going into the summer is give everyone a little bit of a break to start to work with some of the people who have had some best practices in the stipended positions to try to improve upon the curriculum. That wasn't an easy process either. We're still only 4 months out from when they were thrust into this. So we're in the process now of starting to share out what a lot of the teachers have created over the summer. And it's the same anxiety that the teachers over the summer came and talked to us about when it all, like, how are we going to do this? How is this possible? So a lot of the teachers, as we present this plan, and these are the same thing we went through earlier in the summer when we started providing the training and they started developing their own lessons. How is this possible? How are we going to do it? And the teachers working with each other are the ones that really create the exemplars and the way to actually do this with best practice. I've seen best practice live. I've seen best practice on Screencastify, and a lot of it has been trial and error. But over the summer, we're hoping to present now in August that we're going to tape a lot of these trainings too. So if people aren't able to view them, they can go back. And we have our technology staff available all through the summer. They've been working diligently with these teachers over the summer to provide lessons on how to use a lot of these tools. So it's not going to be perfect in 4 months, but I will tell you that we're improving upon this online learning process. And we're investigating this, and we've had the same conversations that you are having right here over and over and over again with teachers on a weekly basis. And we're very eager now. It took a while for them to get product where they can share out with their colleagues to present some of these lessons so that we can continue this discussion. And a lot of teachers are going to be working to develop lessons over the summer so that they're prepared for whatever may be in store in September.
And just to clarify, I know we keep saying, recordings and things like that for the lessons. It's not necessarily just a recording of the lesson that was occurring in class. Like some teachers will be making recordings of small parts of lessons that can be posted onto Schoology. And then when they're posted on there, the students will watch it and then complete some tasks on it and go through that. So those might be the tasks that the students are doing on their virtual days that are not as difficult. They'll still have access to the teachers. They'll still be able to check in, but the teachers going through their best practices in the different levels is going to vary.
And one of the main topics that we talk about all the time is student engagement through online learning. And that's one of the most difficult things to do. And they're presenting some pretty good lessons where students are engaged. There's check for understanding. And it's just not read this and do this worksheet.
Thank you, guys. Does anybody have any questions for Vinny or Russ while they're here?
Yeah, I do. How, you've spent a lot of time on this, and I know, I agree with the spring. It was an amazing effort by Vernon, and I think that what you're doing over the summer to develop curriculum is great, and to handle to come up with ideas and be creative. But what do we do about the fact that we're actually trying to serve two different groups of kids, some at home and some in school? Do you feel like it can be done effectively and without the double teaching and the time, extra time from educators. It just feels to me like we're trying to do two different things with the same staff at the same time, and that you can't be in two places at once. So
With our experts, you would sacrifice the teacher that they would have in class for a substitute teacher who might not have the background or the expertise. This is not an easy process. You have to do it efficiently. We're looking at academics. We're looking at financial as well. The easiest solution is to hire extra teachers for all these classes. I don't think we're in a spot right now where we can do that with the funding from the state. So we've discussed multiple ways. That's why we came up with a certain way for K through 5 that we thought was the easiest. Middle school and high school was the most difficult, and we still don't know what we're doing yet until we find out what students and what teachers are not here yet, and how to fill those voids. Do you have a situation? How can we keep these classes? Do we have to dissolve the classes? I would like to continue offering what we offer, and hopefully this is a 3 to 4 to 5 month process. Who knows if it's a completely online process and everyone's receiving the same education with the same teachers. There's so many scenarios in this situation that it is, we're up late at night trying to figure out some different solutions, and we welcome good ideas and approaches. We've had some good ideas and approaches from the teachers that we've been sharing and possibly implement next year as well.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Ben, Russ, thank you.
Karen, I wanted to pivot and ask some questions about health and safety a little bit. Have we received any more guidance from the Department of Health or the Department of Education on how we are supposed to react if we do have a confirmed positive, or if we do have a local outbreak? What metrics are going to be used to determine if schools need to be closed? Have they given any clear guidance on that?
We have a draft that we can share, but it's in.
Justin, we
draft.
can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
The question was, have we gotten any clear guidance from the Department of Health or Department of Education on how we are to respond if there's a local outbreak or if we have a confirmed positive case in one of our schools?
So my response is that we have a draft. This was drafted by Hunterdon, Sussex, and Warren County Schools in conjunction with the Departments of Health. However, it is not confirmed that this is what we use. In fact, what they recommended was that we share it with our nurses, our nursing coordinator, our school physician, ask them to look it over and have them provide guidance. So right now it's been given to our school nurses to take a look at, and they are going through public health to find out if we should follow these guidelines or not. The challenge is that these are for Hunterdon, Sussex, and Warren. So I was on a call today with some superintendent from Bergen County, Essex County, and some other places. They were asking for the same thing. There's no statewide guidance right now, and there's no definitive countywide guidance right now that says if we have a confirmed case, for example, what happens. So the paper that Dr. McKay just passed out to members of the board, I'll just read the very first one, says confirmed case, student or faculty, and under containment response, it says may recommend school-wide virtual instruction for a day to allow the health department to complete investigation and contact tracing. It says all students and faculty in the class or on the bus with a confirmed case are quarantined for 14 days. It says confirmed case will isolate for at least 10 days since their symptoms first appeared, and they have no fever for 24 hours, 1 full day without the use of medicine to reduce fever, and symptoms improved. Again, it's a draft. It's not done yet. This is where we are today on July 30th. This was drafted last week, earlier in the week, July 26th. And we are waiting for more, exact guidance from the Department of Health and from our other officials.
So this is a draft.
Yep.
And certainly we would need to know before they go back to school.
Yes, we would.
Do they have any idea? Because reading this, I would never send my child to school.
I know.
Because on day one, a teacher or a student could get sick, and we're shutting we're shutting everything down for 2 weeks. So what's the sense of sending?
Well, it says
everybody?
all students and faculty in class.
Not everyone, yeah.
What's that, Jen?
It wouldn't be everyone, right? It would be the people on the bus with that child and the,
According,
on the bus
according
and in
to
the
the,
classroom.
according to the draft of what we have today, it says in the class. Now, there are the same questions you're both asking are being asked at the county level. So at what points we shut down the school, right? And if it's a teacher who teaches multiple classes, like take a high school teacher who is live and they're teaching 5 sections of something, right? They've now taught 5 different sections of, whatever it is, math. All of those children have now been impacted, right? So again, you ask the questions.
No, and I'm not
Yeah.
criticizing you in any way.
Yeah.
It just, to me, reading this,
I know.
this is an exercise in futility, sending children to school.
I agree. Well, I disagree with that, but I do agree with this concern. So I will tell you, I was on a multi-county call today, and the biggest concerns are these kind of guidelines. The other thing is, look, the reopening plan that we're talking about, approving tonight, we're waiting on a checklist from the Department of Education. Our plan is due to the Department of Ed tomorrow. We still don't have a checklist from the Department of Ed. And we're still waiting. And they were the ones who said you have to have it due 4 weeks before school starts, and it should follow the checklist. But we don't have the checklist. So I'm going to submit our plan when we get the checklist. I have to revise it based on the checklist. I mean, I wish that I had more direct information. Again, guidance.
No, and we
This
know
is all we
we
get.
know it's not you, but I have to say,
I know.
to approve a reopening
Yeah.
plan after looking at this, I can't vote yes for that.
so,
And you don't have to.
yeah,
No,
so,
I know, I'm
Yeah,
just saying, you
Yeah,
know.
that's okay.
so I just, I don't know if all of the board members had the opportunity to see the email that I sent over this afternoon. I did have the opportunity to speak with the board attorney today to get some clarification on the process for the reopening plan that is supposed to be up for a vote this evening. And just for the members of the public as well, it's recommended by the state that local boards of education approve the reopening plan as a best practice. However, it's not a requirement in order for it to move on to the county. And the county is still going to require the CSAs,
Yes.
the superintendent, to submit a plan that complies with the state's requirements. So essentially it becomes a meaningless vote, a symbolic meaningless vote at the local level, which will go through the motions because it's what's being asked of us from the state. But, if you hear frustration in my voice or the voice of other board members or administrators, it's, I think that we have run into numerous circumstances, and our faculty are well aware of this as well, where the state is saying, you have to submit a plan to us that requires a component for in-person instruction. However, at the same time, you have to have social distancing. By the way, you can't serve lunches. By the way, you have to make sure that everybody's wearing masks, but maybe some of the time. And we're not going to give you clear guidance on what to do if you have an outbreak. And we're not going to give you clear guidance on how to handle a confirmed case in your schools. And, figure out most of the safety and health protocols on the local level. So if there's a frustration and lack of guidance, I just want to make it very clear that from my perspective, at least, it's not at the administration. I think they've been given a Herculean task, and they are looking for a good answer where there is not one to be found. And we are complying with what the state is requiring of us as a district. In fact, I think that our plan, as far as health and safety protocols go, is above and beyond what the state is asking of us. However, I struggle with voting yes, even though it is a symbolic vote essentially on the plan today, because I think that there are too many unknowns. At the end of the day, when the state puts in the requirements for social distancing and for requiring in-person instruction and saying we can't have cafeteria lunches, the only solution is that you then have a hybrid model with 4 hours of instruction a day. So at the end of the day, we're not even solving the childcare solution that many members of our community have. We're not even offering, filling that role that we've always filled as a public school system for the last 50 years of being a place where children receive an education, receive nourishment, where you can have 2 family working households, because they're going to receive 8 to 12 hours of education on any given week in order to be compliant with the state's requirements. So we're not filling that role. And then we're trying to meet some level of education for our students and trying to, I think Jen put it well, we're asking our teachers to be in 2 places at once on some days. So I will probably be voting no on this plan this evening. I understand that it will still go on to the state and onto the county for approval, but the requirements and the recommendations and the guidance from the state don't meet my expectations as a board member as far as health, safety, and education go.
Yeah,
So-
and as a parent, it doesn't mean anything, any expectations. And I have to say, I know that you're saying it's a meaningless vote, but I think by voting no, we're sending a message if, and maybe Ms. Davino can note that the fact that the members are voting no for that reason, that there is no guidance. And this after reading this, I mean, it's just obviously it's not safe. Like it's not safe for our staff. It's not safe for our students. And we're going to be basically shutting down every other day, another classroom. I don't know how any of us can vote yes on this.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, we're literally voting for a policy that has the real possibility of directly causing illness and even potentially death of members of our community. Administrators, faculty, educators, students, their families, and for nothing. There's nothing gained here. There's not a great quality of education. No offense to the administration, because you did a fabulous job trying to meet all these crazy requirements. But the education, the quality of the education is going to be difficult to deliver with this kind of situation. And we aren't serving the childcare needs of the families, because 4 hours a day for 2 days a week is not, helping anybody. And even the socialization thing for children. I mean, with masks on, 6 feet apart, the stress of all that, I don't really see how that's a positive. I mean, there's better ways to achieve that, at home by potting up with other families. Like there's no win here. It just feels like, and it's
Definitely need to send a message.
it's so frustrating because it's a Sisyphean task at the end of the day, because our administration has worked tirelessly for 6 weeks to try to come up with a plan that meets the requirements set forth by the state. And I mean, I think that in an impossible situation, you guys have done an incredible job with the cards you've been dealt.
An amazing
So,
job, really.
And the frustration that I'm expressing, at least, is not directed at our central office by any means.
Okay, so if a teacher wants to teach synchronously, can they? 100% no problem with teaching synchronously. Because I know this question has been out there for 3 weeks and they've not gotten a response. Yes, they can. Okay. Secondly, kids that are going online. In the past, it said if the online is not working out for them, we will work with the families and they can start attending school. I don't see how that's an efficient way of doing it. I think the parents, if they make a decision for the first market period that they're going to be online, that they stay online. Otherwise, you're going to end up with parents waking up on Tuesday morning and saying, "Oh, you know what? I got to go to the doctor's on Thursday. Maybe I'll send my kid to school on Thursday rather than leave them home." We have to take a hard line on that. And also, it's not right. It's not fair to the teachers who are in school teaching to have kids coming in and out of their classroom based off of they chose to be online. So I think we've said here in the past week or so, we think what would be helpful if we can get a couple teachers to do a podcast to show parents what a virtual lesson actually looks like so they can make a decision if they're going to come or not come. Because honestly, and I've said this for a month, I don't know how we develop a reopening plan when we have no idea who's coming to school, how many, or what grade level, or anything. So we have to do something to help the parents make a decision of who's coming and who's not coming, and then go from there.
So I agree with all of what you said about helping parents make a decision, but I am concerned about the comment you made about committing, because I think that until, as long as we're delivering a quality experience, parents who are virtual will be happy with their decision. But the
So then they should be able to go ahead and make a decision to stay home.
problem is that they don't they won't know whether that's actually doable.
Jen, let me ask you a question.
Still talking.
Jen, let me ask you a question.
Still
What
talking.
is going to change in the next 4 weeks that's going to make that decision different?
I'm still talking, okay? I don't think that we know whether we can deliver a quality experience until we try to do it. So it's not really fair to have parents commit to something and then possibly find out that what they committed to isn't at all what we told them to expect. That's really not fair. So
I'll go back to my question again. What is going to change in the next 4 weeks that would make that decision any different?
If, for example, my kid has, a horrible experience, like is getting, not great lessons because he's virtual only and he's not, he's not engaged, doesn't feel connected, isn't learning. Like if that's happening, if that's happening to any parent, I think that parent, should have the right to get their child an education because that's what we're here for. I mean, we're here to educate kids. We're not here to tell parents, oh, sorry, you made the wrong choice. Too bad for you. That's not our job.
It's not like we're asking them to make a decision for the next year. We're asking them to make it for 40 days. That's all we're doing. Jen, now I'm talking, Jen. Now I'm talking, okay? For our administration to make very sound decisions for our entire district. That's all we're doing. There's places in Virginia that have asked people 3 weeks ago to make a decision for the entire year. I think to ask a parent to make a decision for 40 days is not an unreasonable ask.
It is if they don't know what they're making a decision about. It is.
And that's exactly why I asked the teacher if they can make a podcast of lessons.
I agree that should happen, but I don't know that, we've asked for that before. I don't know that they can actually do that yet. Look at what we were just told. We were just told we don't know what teachers will agree to do. So how are they going to tell us what they're going to do? That's not really possible for them to give you an accurate picture of what you're signing on for. And 40 days is a long time in education, as you know how many days the school year is. So, it's just a little bit much to ask of people. And by the way, I'm really glad I don't live in Virginia, and the people in Virginia aren't terribly happy with that decision. So I wouldn't hold them up as some shining beacon. And also I would give more credit to our families than to suspect that someone's going to go, oh, I have a dentist appointment, I'm going to send my kid to school today, even though yesterday I was really worried about their health. I can promise you I will not be sending my children to school because I have a dentist appointment. I'm not keeping them home for convenience.
But some people are.
No, I don't agree with that.
That's the point.
It's a difficult decision.
And we also, now to go back to your point about having teachers do it, we have teachers that are getting paid money over the summertime to create online classes. So why can't we have those teachers who are developing this online curriculum take 10 minutes to develop a couple of lessons to show parents what the kids can receive online? I don't think that's a tough ask. They're getting paid to do it. We're not asking to volunteer time.
Well, we just, as I said, just heard from some of the people developing that they really are struggling to know what it will look like at every grade level. So I just think if they're telling us that it's difficult for them to see, then I don't know how they're going to tell us what it's going to look like when they don't actually know. I mean, they just said that.
I'd like to chime in and just say that, it's truly unprecedented, right? So it's a cliche, but it is unprecedented. And what I got from Russ and Vinny when they got up and spoke is that, teachers really are adaptable, they're creative. And I think if someone chooses an online platform and an instructor, a teacher is dedicated to that online instruction, they're going to get better. And it's a learning curve for everybody. This is certainly unprecedented. And in order for us as a district to come together and deal with this particular situation, I think we have to be a little bit flexible in how we deliver content, creative in how we deliver content. And one shoe is not going to fit everyone, which is why I commend Chuck for trying to make it fit everyone. And I think that this is all going to be a learning curve for everyone. And I am okay with sending my children back to school. I think the safety protocols, I think the mask wearing is essential. I think that if I were comfortable in sending my children back to school, I think the plan is reasonable in what the state has given us for guidance. Does that say that, we shouldn't go back to school at all? I don't know, because any risk that you put any person in harm's way, then that is on, elected officials' conscience. And, I don't know what the right answer is, but at least given the guidance that the state has given us, I think this is a reasonable plan in order to try to accommodate a multitude of learners and a multitude of family situations.
Okay, thanks, Mike, because I'm going to build on what you said about the learners. So I've sat through quite a few meetings. I'm chairperson of special services, and there has been zero information what happens with our special education population. I mean, we've learned that students in the self-contained preschool disabled, primary only LLD, BD, and ABA programs will be invited to the in-person instruction for 4 days. But there's been nothing taught in general. The parents have been asking, what's going to happen? How are modifications and accommodations?
Right.
We got this information. I sit here and I'm reading this, and a lot of this, I'm trying to figure out what that means. There was a whole special education committee, so I figured there would have been some sort of information since we have a special education population.
Right.
It's one thing when you have a student in general education, and it's a very difficult decision then to begin, but then you add that extra layer of now you have a child with an IEP or a 504, technically 504 gen ed, but same idea because they're receiving modifications and accommodations, and there's been no information other than those 4 groups really given to parents who are out there trying to decide what happens for their students. They have an extra, even heavier added layer of making decisions. So I was under the impression that there would have been some special education information being shared for the parents. And now these parents have to get back to us by August 5th, and there's really been no special education information shared. So I guess in that regard, I'm disappointed because, I don't know how those parents are going to make up their decisions. I don't know how the special education teachers are going to be able to know, what they have to do. They have to keep so many balls in the air.
Sure.
And when I look at this, when I'm looking at this report, I'm seeing constantly greatest extent possible, when necessary, where possible, greatest extent possible is an arbitrary term. Whose greatest extent possible? I have a different definition of greatest extent possible than maybe Brad does.
Sure.
Or maybe Justin does. We all have different definitions. And, that needs to be explained. Parents need to know, what does greatest extent possible mean? There's things like may have in here. Special education, you don't use the word may, you don't use the word shall. Everything is defined down to the minute. Like this one, procedures will be developed to address students who are in needs of interventions and will be followed as necessary. Okay, well, what is that in special ed? What is an intervention in special education? The CST team will continually monitor students on their caseloads to ensure IEP goals and objectives are being followed to the greatest extent possible. Well, yeah, that's a child study team member's job.
Sure.
It is their job to make sure that students' caseloads are monitored.
Sure.
Well, how will it be monitored? And greatest extent possible? No, not to the greatest extent possible. That's their job. So parents should have a full explanation, as should teachers, child study team members, anyone who works in a classroom. And there's been, no, and have a very clear explanation of when I step foot in my classroom on September, this or that, or when I'm doing it virtually, and it's been unfortunate that there really has been no other information shared. And like, I'm looking at this, students in primary self-contained. Well, what if you're in a middle school self-contained or a high school self-contained? There really needed to be a full set. So I sat here thinking that there would be some sort of full special education explanation. And I was very surprised that there wasn't one. And this is another one. Students who are exclusively virtual may have all or a portion of their services in person. Well, if they're exclusively virtual, how are they getting their services in person? And I agree, all safety protocols will be adhered to. And then like classroom aids will be utilized when necessary to meet IEP needs. Well, it's not when necessary. If a student has in their IEP that they receive an aid, then they have an aid. It's not when necessary. If it's stated in their IEP and they're in that classroom for the group up there or any student, it's not when necessary. So it's just, I've been getting reached out by parents in general, and I told them all, watch the meeting tonight, learn,
Right.
And it's just unfortunate because now these parents have to go out and make a decision. And I was really hoping to get a full explanation tonight about special education due to that extra layer, and also how many teachers are watching, how many CST team members are watching. And, they were probably hoping for answers as well, too.
So my question in regards to this, Teresa, and I'm sorry if I cut you off, is what information would we be able to provide, I guess, at the board table in this setting? Because an IEP is an individualized education plan and everyone is so unique, wouldn't most of those questions have to be discussed with their child study team?
Not necessarily, because, for example, they're saying preschool disabled, primary LLD, BD, and ABA. Those are not the only special education programs that we offer.
Yes.
So what happens for resource room? There's nothing about resource room. What happens with older
Resource
kids?
room children are scheduled depending on the choice that the families make. And I understand that there's a lot of concern and frustration at the table. And I know that that's happening in our homes too. And I really think we have to be flexible. I know nobody wants to hear that word anymore. I'm hearing things like we need to make a commitment for a marking period. We have to honor.
Right, and Karen,
IEPs.
I'm just gonna stay in the special ed trail right now, because when I get on my special ed trail and someone throws a
Go ahead.
boulder in front of me, you don't want to throw a boulder in front of my
Go ahead.
special ed trail, I can be
Go
honest
ahead.
with you.
We'll talk
As
about
Kelly's
the other stuff
giggling
later.
over there.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, in-class resource, where is that? What happens if the student chooses virtual for in-class resource versus in-class? What's going to happen? There had to be some sort of explanation for this, to explain. I have to say, I'm really surprised. We have this whole special education committee who came together and worked on this. And then this is all the information we got, and nothing's been passed out to the parents. That's just very concerning. And it's very frustrating. And I think, quite frankly, parents were extremely flexible in special education in spring. I give them so much credit because they were so flexible, honestly, to the point I don't even know if I would have been as flexible as half of those parents were, because they understood. And they said, teachers were thrown into this, kids were thrown into this, everybody was.
Right.
But now it's how many months later, so you had the time. So now it's like, okay, we had the time, we had the committee, so now give the parents the whole explanation. And I agree, I'm gonna use Karen's word, frustrating. Because with special ed, it's a whole different layer than gen ed. It's, specialty literally unto itself. So I feel bad for parents who have children with IEPs right now who are not able to make that decision and have all of this information available to them. But no, Justin, in general, yes, you have IEPs which are individual, but across the board, if you are a parent and you say, well, my child is in, a different setting, or my child's receiving services, like just to have a whole explanation of what would happen and how that would happen. And maybe let's say if a student stays home and only does virtual, well, then an explanation, a day in the life of a child who is virtual and is in resource room, there should be an explanation versus a student who's, let's say, virtual and in an in-class resource setting. Like there should be a whole explanation, how are you going to do that versus if they're in school versus if they're home. So that really would have been very much appreciated. So that way these families who have that, like I keep using the term extra layer added, would be able to figure it out. All right, I'm done. You can throw boulders in my trail.
Do other board members have questions or comments on the reopening plan or what was presented this evening? Okay.
So
Oh,
will
I
this
do
be,
have a
will this be made public since we discussed it at the board table?
I would prefer, I mean, I guess it has to be, but it's not ready and it's not official and it's a draft. So,
No, I know, but
you know,
I mean,
you guys wanted to see it and hear about it, but it, you know,
I feel
Yeah.
that since we spoke about it at the board table, it
Fine.
should be made public.
but it's gonna change. I have to say that it is not our policy as a district. It hasn't been adopted by the county. I've been given no direction that this is what we're doing. And I agree that anything we talk about at the table needs to be made public. And I know you think parents are gonna make a decision based on this, and they may, that's up to them. But I just
I'm
have to
not
go on
saying
record.
exclusively on this,
Yeah,
but
no.
but
I'm
this
just
would
saying.
sway me. I mean,
Yeah.
as a parent, it would, I have to say, and I know it's just
Yeah.
a draft, but it would definitely, it's very eye-opening.
Right.
And it would sway my thought process. So I anything that I see,
Yeah.
I want the public to be able to.
I agree. I don't disagree with that. I just need to stress that I can't say that this is what we're doing
No.
because I don't know. And that
Maybe we could
sounds,
put a little notation on it when we.
Yeah.
Just put draft right across the.
and that sounds
Yeah.
terrible, right?
Oh, God, we're shifting
Yeah, I
things.
get it. And that sounds terrible.
I'm
for
sorry
the-
to frustrate you.
No, I was
You know,
just trying to
don't
finish
feel
my
like-
sentence.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that it probably sounds to everybody that the superintendent doesn't want to commit to anything, but I'm not gonna commit to anything until I get an
I don't think it
official
sounds like that at all. I think
So
that
that's all.
you've poured yourself, endlessly into all of this, and we all appreciate it. I know that this.
I understand. No, and I appreciate that. Look, I think parents should always see and hear. In fact, the executive summary is located on the table in the back if people want to take a look at it. It's available for everybody so that they can see what the plan looks like. I agree that people should see everything we have. I just don't want to be committed to people saying, well, this is what the board, we're not approving it, right? It's just information, so.
Yes.
No, I actually thought of you as soon as Chuck passed this out, and I took one look at it and I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to be like Ms. Davino. Like I felt bad for you because I thought this is going to be like a snow day. Like at 5 a.m., you're going to have to be like, oh my gosh, the result came in positive. And
Right.
it might come in an email to you at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then you may have to go to whatever
We
draft we have at that
We
moment.
may have to.
And then you're gonna have to send out that thing, and I thought, that's so unfair to you, it's unfair to the teachers, it's unfair because the parent's gonna like be waking up at 6 in the morning, roll over, and there's a text like a snow day, and that's
saying,
hard.
all of a sudden, my kid doesn't have class.
Yeah, and what am I gonna do, I have to go to
Yeah.
work, so no, I
Yeah.
feel for you,
It
I
is.
feel
I
for
mean,
these parents.
it's a
But you
terrible
can see
situation.
where a parent would maybe make a different
Yeah, this
decision
is
based
hard.
on this.
Yeah.
This is a tough one.
It is, and it's so unfortunate because we're all in such a tough spot. Nobody's ever done this before.
No.
And listen, we hope we never have to do it again, right? We're gonna do the best we can and get through it. And hopefully, in whatever amount of time, right, that things resume and we get back to, I don't know if it's ever gonna be the way it used to be. I consider this a temporary normal for me. And we'll see where things go. But listen, I mean, you need to know what's happening at the multi-county level. We just don't have anything definitive. And I feel the frustration, do believe me. The amount of calls that I'm on and meetings I'm on every day at the county and then multi-county and state level trying to get direction, it's just absurd.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, but.
I'm glad we're putting a strong focus on the virtual learning though, because
Yeah.
it looks like we're gonna need it, so.
Yeah.
So thank you for whoever's working on that.
Does anybody have any other comments?
I do have one question. For our self-contained preschool disabled program, I think we discussed this in the past, but we are still accepting tuition paid students
Yes.
Now, what if no parents sign up for that? Like, do we have, how many students we have signed up that are Gen
We have
Ed?
students signed up.
We
In
do?
fact, we have people we have more people.
Okay, good.
So,
Right.
I mean, I think Chuck said before when he was doing his presentation, we have about 80 new registrations across the district, people moving in this summer. So, but we do have preschool people registered.
The Gen Ed
Yes.
paying tuition.
All right. Move on to item H, which is public participation, limited to items on the public meeting agenda and any student comments. If you would like to make a comment, please step up towards the microphones and you'll have 5 minutes. We want to move one slightly forward.
Just move, maybe just
I was gonna say,
set it up.
X is back there, and I know I can
With
project.
comments from members of the public who are here in attendance this evening. And we will
no, I'm all right.
then open it up to members of the public who are viewing virtually.
Stand somewhere around here.
I'll try not to trip over all your wires. That would be a mess. I am Vicki Smith. I live in Lake Wallkill section of Vernon. I am a high school English teacher at Vernon High School, and I am the Vernon Township Education Association president. I have a letter that I wish to read to the board. You all have copies. I apologize for people that are online that don't have a copy. If you want, I'll email it to you. Dear members of the Vernon Township Board of Education, tonight you'll be asked to approve a plan for reopening the Vernon Township Public School buildings for students, faculty, and staff in September. Since early April, there have been endless hours spent on Zoom meetings, a multitude of emails, discussions via text, and hour upon hour of reviewing reference materials from the CDC, WHO, AMA, NJDOE, NJEA, NEA, and a bunch of other official acronyms, all in an attempt for our students to have as normal of an education as possible come September. There's a big problem, though. Nothing about the situation we are all in can even remotely be determined as normal. How can it be? There'll be nothing in place that resembles what makes a quality education. No group work, no sharing supplies, no math games with other students, students sitting in rows facing forwards, reading groups spread throughout the room while educators try to keep their distance, students struggling to hear instructions through a mask, no team games during physical education, no meaningful interaction between students or with their educators. I truly believe that there is not one person in this room or watching this meeting via YouTube that doesn't wish that we could start our school year just like we've done every other year, with all the anticipation, excitement, and curiosity that comes with it. We all want our students to be fully engaged, to be able to interact with each other and their educators. We want to be able to see their smiles, give high fives, share ideas and aspirations, revel in successes, and provide encouragement when there are failures, but we can't. Our priority as educators has always been on the health and safety of our students. It is steeped in our curriculum and practices. We teach nutrition and exercise. We inform them about the dangers of smoking, vaping, and drugs, and help them learn the rules of the road, whether they are riding their bike or driving a car. We practice fire drills, helping to make the fire at the high school a few years back from being worse than it was. We learn CPR and the Heimlich maneuver, which on more than one occasion in our own district has prevented further tragedy of a child choking. We have green alerts, red alerts, warn of stranger danger, participate in lockdowns, and discuss amongst ourselves what we would do to protect our students. God forbid we have an active shooter in the building. This board, this administration, every single one of the faculty and staff of the Vernon Township School District is acutely cognizant of the fact that we are entrusted with someone's most valuable possession, their child. We are now faced with something that is close to impossible to protect our students and ourselves from, COVID-19. If our school buildings are reopened, we're told there'll be extra cleaning protocols, student temperature checks, mandatory masks, availability to hand sanitizers, encourage social distancing, adjustments to a ventilation system that is weak to begin with, and limited student numbers. This is what we're told will help to make reopening the school buildings safer for our students, faculty, and staff. Safer, perhaps. Totally safe? Unfortunately, no. There is no way this board or administration can guarantee someone, be it student or employee, will not contract, transmit, or suffer from this deadly virus. If the school buildings are opened, we cannot be guaranteed we will know who is carrying the virus. And we cannot be guaranteed a student or employee will not contract the virus. We cannot be guaranteed that someone who is asymptomatic will not transmit the virus. And most disturbing of all, we cannot be guaranteed a student or employee will not die from this virus. For this reason alone, the VTEA does not support the reopening of our school buildings for any in-person learning. So what can we do? We don't claim to have all the answers, and it is evident from the various faculty meetings held over the past few days regarding this reopening plan, neither does administration. How could they? There are too many variables, too many unanswerable questions. And I noticed the typo there, by the way. But this should be evident to all of us. If we stop pursuing this unobtainable goal of attempting to provide a, quote, normal in-person school day for our students, and we instead collectively focus our resources, time, and energies into creating an enriching, comprehensive, engaging, fully remote educational plan for all our students instead, our students, faculty, and staff, and all of their families will truly be safer. And when the time comes, and it will come one day, that it is absolutely safe to reopen the buildings because this deadly virus has been completely controlled or eradicated, we will be there, welcoming our students with open arms and get back to a truly normal educational experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public who are here tonight in the audience?
Good evening, Jeanette Emmerich, Highland Lakes section of Vernon, and high school teacher. I just have two questions about the all virtual, exclusively virtual.
Sure.
Maybe it was just a pull of numbers, but you said if we had 90 kids, you'd assign 2 teachers.
If you had 2 teachers available in the certificated area.
I'm talking lower grades, K-5.
Yeah, and you had whatever amount of students, whatever it is, you would be able to create a house. So a house could be 60 students or less. And it would, 2 houses, we probably would, I think we have 90 in one of the grade levels. So that would be 2 houses where you would have 4 teachers, but you need 4 teachers who are home teaching virtually to those students.
Or you have teachers who are in the school teaching virtually to those students.
Which they can do, yes.
I just want to make sure we're not going like way over numbers just because, well, these are the virtual teachers and these are the virtual kids. So we're going to, like, a teacher shouldn't be assigned 45 kids to their roster. That would be insane on every level.
Sure.
And 45 kids in a Zoom meeting? You ever see a kindergarten Zoom meeting? I have. I got to be a special guest last year.
First 3
It was
letters are
a
pretty
mess,
accurate.
and that was a well-organized class. So we won't be going over numbers then. Okay.
Yeah,
And-
but we need the teachers to be able to do it. We need to set them up, make sure that to search as much as we possibly can. We've talked about this, trying to align it as best as possible.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, like, my kid's not going to be put in a class with 45 other kids. And will those exclusively virtual students be, lack of a better term, virtually face-to-face with their teachers? Like, will they have set times that they have to check in?
Yes, they will have set times for them to check in. I think that many of the teachers will, it depends on the elementary level. Oftentimes with the elementary level in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, they had a time where they were going to Zoom in with the kids. They work with them, and then they gave them work online. What we're trying to do with some of the things that we're working on in the first couple weeks of August is so that people feel comfortable with flip lessons, as well as, the idea of saying to a student, we've had our morning meeting, we've had our discussions, we've had our agenda, we had a mini lesson. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video of me doing this math practice. Because I think in many times when a teacher is teaching in a Zoom lesson, students all want to talk or they want to raise their hand, and there's time for that, but there's also time for, all right, check this, I want you to check this video out. So I know that many times our teachers then showed a video of somebody else doing it, but what we're talking about is trying to enrich their experience by having the teacher teach them. If that makes sense.
There is a mute button.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm really good at it. Hit the mute button, they all stop talking.
Right.
I just want to make sure that.
But let's say you're sitting right there in a Zoom meeting and you're having a conversation. The next step is this as a teacher. So you're teaching here and you want to go to your board.
Well, that's going to be a lesson, a learning experience for all of us.
Oh, absolutely.
Most definitely.
Okay, so you know that then the Zoom tends, when you think about it, the Zoom tends to not work right there. But if you did a recording of you teaching this lesson, you would be in the Zoom meeting going, okay, kids, now this next piece is me, and I have a funny hat on, and I'm going to do this piece. So pay attention to that. I'll watch your reactions. We'll be back in 5 minutes to talk about it. That type of thing.
Okay.
I'm not trying to.
No, that I'm okay with, like watch the video and then we're going to get back together. I just want to make sure that it's not going to be, listen, we did the best job we possibly could in March. But I want to make sure that our kids are right in front of us as much as they virtually can be. And at the high school level, if a teacher decides they're going to do synchronous learning, will students be held accountable for showing up on time, like in that class period?
If that teacher says that I'm doing synchronous learning at all times and the student needs to be here and I'm not recording anything, then that has to be clearly established in the beginning of their class. And what they're saying is, I have autonomy in my classroom and this is the way I'm going to run it.
Okay.
That's going to be, there are going to be parents that have a problem with that. But I will say this, that we have always talked about how important teacher autonomy.
But if you're teaching during a school time frame, then that's when the kids are in school. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Nicole Cushman, Lake Panorama. I have a kindergartner going to be entering the school system. My husband and I are both from Vernon raised. I had a couple of questions about the online virtual.
Sure.
So, you know, it takes a village, especially when you're a working parent, an essential worker. My parents are going to try to help us out as much as we can. So is there a set time that she's going to have to log in?
Let's have my seat. You sit here, I'll talk to you right here. We'll talk right in front of the microphone so everybody can hear. All right. So set time for the child to.
Like, so, you know, if my parents have her.
Right.
And they need to sit with her at the computer, say, school starts 9 o'clock.
Right.
Math time is at this time. They have to sit at the computer with her to do the math lesson.
Sure. But there may be problems. Let's say with working parents, grandma gets there, but she's not ready to work, or grandpa gets there and they're not ready to work at that point.
Right.
That's why I keep talking about the record button.
Okay.
It really wouldn't take too much for one of our staff members to, when they're working on that Zoom lesson, to press that record button and then know that, and this takes communication with the parents, know that that parent really can't get on until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the child would then have that experience, but it wouldn't always be live.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying we can guarantee all of this, but we're trying to offer that so that you have these options. Now, you see these wonderful teachers and all they're talking about is how they're going to try, right? And you hear people and they're all worried about the health of your child as well. There it is. That's the absolute conundrum that we're dealing with right now, which is keeping them healthy, making sure that they're engaged, and doing everything we can for working parents who are doing all the tough things that our society expects. So, yeah. All right. So give me your other
I would be
questions.
able to, like, after I got home from work, if my
You would be
parents
able to
weren't
look
able
at
to, I would be able to look at it and
Yes.
help her with homework
Yes.
or anything like that.
Yes. And the possibility even on your end that if grandma was watching it, of trying to record it as well. So there's other things that we're going to talk about as well. And then we want our teachers to say that to parents, which is, here's another option for you as a possibility.
So after if say we do the virtual for the whole first marking period,
Right.
and then there's the decision, okay, we feel comfortable sending her back now, things are going okay. She would be assigned to a new kindergarten teacher?
That depends. If she's working with a virtual kindergarten teacher, because we have enough students in that cohort of kindergarten, we're up to 171 in kindergarten. So let's say 50 of those or 20 of those are with one teacher virtual. Then if she was coming back, the question is, do we keep just 20 students come back, or is she the only one coming back? She would not stay with that virtual teacher. Then she'd have to go to another classroom only because she's the only one coming back. But that's not what I feel is going to happen. Now we're talking about being flexible. I'm not sure, but there might be 10 students that come back, and then maybe we can work something out where they could stay with that teacher, and it would be a classroom situation. Now, the teacher may be teaching from a classroom anyway, even though she has a whole virtual group. That's what I think Ms. Emmerich was talking about, that she could teach from the classroom. All right, so then she starts to become a hybrid teacher as opposed to just a virtual teacher.
Okay. I already apologize. How can parents learn how to use the platforms that are going to be used for the teaching of the kids?
Right.
Like, how can I
How can
teach
you work with school?
my mother and my daughter how to use the platforms if I don't know how to do it?
Right, exactly. So the PD that's for our teachers in August is the first step. The next step is working with parents. So whether that's parent PD or our teachers talking to parents and saying, this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use Screencastify. This is how it works. And all you have to do is this, this, and this. We have a whole new set of what we have to talk to parents about in the beginning of the year.
Okay.
It used to be about pencils and not chewing gum. Now it's about masks and online tools.
And then like supplies and everything that would be needed. Like, do I have to go out and buy her a computer or like anything that they would need?
We
for
have
the classroom?
Chromebooks for children. Matt, I don't want to step on your toes. Do we have enough Chromebooks for kindergartners who would go virtual?
I'll discuss that with Principal Peace Check. And the plan is that we're going to try to get a Chromebook to every child. My problem for K-1, it's just a matter of timing. So it may not be until like mid-September once we have the new 6th grade, 9th grade laptops in their hands and get the old Chromebooks cleaned up, sanitized, and in your hands. So the quick answer is yes, I plan to have a Chromebook for every child. The long answer is I'm not sure when.
Okay, so for the start, she may have to start on what we have. Okay.
Although he's a miracle worker. Since now that he knows you, you might get.
And then any kind of testing or assessments and everything, like she'll be learning to read and everything.
Yes.
So they'll be able to do that individually with the kids.
I'm not sure on
online,
some of
or-
those, but the dial 4 that we usually use is a test before kindergarten begins. And that is a psychomotor test, so we can't do that. We'd have to bring you in. So the testing that have to be done will be on level reading, and that's where we start. I believe that some of that will be able to be done by our reading specialists, but we'll have to see again how that goes.
All right, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your questions and for coming to all 3 of our meetings. I know they're lengthy, but thank you so much for coming. Do any other members of the public who are here in the audience tonight have questions or comments? Okay, so it looks like we have about 6 comments coming in from the live stream. The first one is from Martin Parenter of Vernon. I support the BOE members voting no due to the concerns they've voiced and urge to make sure we have a good, solid, all online/virtual plan, including extracurricular activities. If you could also add to my comment that I fully agree with the VTEA letter. That was from Martin Parenter. Can you guys who are virtual hear me? The next comment that's coming through is from Tracy Cryan of Highland Lakes. Will the kids doing virtual only have the ability to do a meet and greet? Oh, Matt, my computer just died.
Of course it's
No.
Matt's just grabbing another computer. Just please hold.
I'll give the chat room just another moment.
Is that a meet and greet for parents?
I don't know where else.
We don't know what the
Yeah,
rest of
I was only halfway through the question.
Yeah.
We have talked about a virtual parent night, and we do want to do sort of introduction videos type of thing. It is a very big concern online about getting to know the student and the parents getting to know the teacher. That's a very big deal.
All right, Magic Matt has saved the day.
Once again.
Once again. All right, I apologize, Tracy, I was in the middle of your comment. And that was, this is from Tracy Cryan of Highland Lakes. Will the kids doing virtual only have the ability to do a meet and greet or one-on-one Zoom with the teachers before school starts so they can be comfortable with them, especially the elementary kids?
I would assume that the administrators on the elementary level will talk to their teachers and maybe ask them to make that connection.
You know, the one thing I would say is that reflective of what Mrs. Smith was saying, this opening is unlike any other, right? But our elementary teachers have always done really creative, wonderful things with new children, right? They send out letters, they send out little cards maybe to parents saying, tell us about your child's favorite food, favorite color, favorite pet. You know, all of those learning inventory kind of things happen from a lot of our staff. So although I can't answer Tracy's question specifically, our teachers have always been very creative in finding ways to connect with kids and families before they come into the classroom. That speaks to transitions that we talk about so often here in the district. So although I don't know whether it will be virtual or online or in person via some kind of a written documentation, I know that our faculty always finds a way to reach out and connect with families to make children feel welcome. And I'm sure they're going to do the same thing as well. We just don't know what it looks like yet.
Okay, thank you. The next comment is from Leslie Macbeth of Highland Lakes. How are therapy and services going to be handled? Teletherapy versus in person? How are we going to meet full IEP services amount for each student in September? Thank you.
Adam, do you want to chime in on that?
This one? Doesn't matter. Either one of those little
One of the small
round
circles.
Okay. Small circle.
So IEP services, related services, we are working right now to make it available that parents bring their students in to bring their children in to receive services, even if they are not in school for that day, to try and offer that to them. There are safety concerns that go along with it. We're working on those to make sure it is safe and have protocols for that. So we are going to do it to the greatest extent possible, that language. And that language is there because the IEPs are not authored with this in mind. And with the different issues and things we have to navigate to make sure everyone is safe. So that's what we are going to try to do for that.
So if a child is virtual, we would have them into the school if the parents.
Correct. Yes, they would drop their child off. The related service provider would give them services, and then they would come pick them up. We're trying to.
They have services 5 days a week in their IEP. Are they able to come 5 days a week?
Yes, that is what we are working to see if we can do. It's going to be a little difficult, obviously, because when related service providers are giving remote services, they can't have a group services because of confidentiality issues, things like that. So the timing is going to be difficult, but we're going to work with them to make sure that we can do it to the best way we can, making sure everyone gets their services for what's allotted in their IEP.
Now, suppose a parent can't drive their child to school back and forth every day. Does that mean then the parent has to then forego the therapy?
No, we still have the option of remote services.
So then remote services.
Yes.
And if a parent's going to drive their child back and forth, would that be considered transportation?
That is something we have to talk to our attorney about, obviously, but we're looking into all those issues. We have a meeting on Monday with the county to discuss some of these issues at the county level, because as with everything else, we are still waiting for some guidance for special ed and special ed related issues from the state. So Monday, hopefully we'll have some of that cleared up. I don't know to what extent everything will be cleared up because we're trying to take it moment by moment and plan the best we can given the changing circumstances.
And then who was it? You said Miss Macbeth?
Yes.
Yes.
So in the spring, since some therapies were only offered for say 10 or 15 minutes, but an IEP might say 30 minutes, what's going to happen in the fall?
Oh, we're going to do our best to give it to exactly what is allotted in the IEP. When we had it in the spring, everyone was remote all the time. So just the amount of time from groups going down to single sessions, the amount of time necessary, it was very difficult to provide that. But now that some people will be here, we can provide groups. We should be able to give for the full amount that's allotted in the IEP.
Should be or will?
To the greatest extent possible that we can, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
The next comment is from Marty Staudinger of Glenwood. Is the problem of having a classroom teacher live stream 5 days to both virtual and hybrid so education is consistent a matter of technology or privacy?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes.
I just want to understand it.
Yep.
Sorry, Chuck.
Is the problem of having a classroom teacher live stream 5 days to both virtual and hybrid so that education is consistent a matter of technology or privacy?
I would say privacy.
There are issues. Marty knows this. Marty talked for years. We talked together. And it's good to hear from her again. There's always going to be technological glitches. We just saw one. You know, this is going to, it happens. It happens. So to say that it's foolproof would be ridiculous. But the truth of the matter is we do have the ability, because we're doing it now, to live stream a classroom. However, again, there's all sorts of issues with autonomy and the best possible way for a teacher to teach. As I talked about with the Zoom. Zoom is one thing, sitting there working for students, but then doing a lesson. And Jeanette pointed out, yeah, you mute but you got to get to the board, or you got to bring your board on, or you got to, so there are things that we can do in order to, but it's not.
Jennifer Appleby of High Breeze. Who should we direct IEP services and specific questions to for children that are transitioning to a new school and do not have an assigned caseworker yet?
Depends on the grade level, but I would say if it's anything from K through 5, it would be Adam and Mr. Kendler. 6 through 12 would be Mrs. Von Salz.
Did you want to add to something, Mr. Keller? I'm sorry.
Yes, we also, if parents have, you gotta watch all the way up
Yeah,
here.
sorry.
Otherwise,
Come on up.
Talking
Come on
to
up.
that one.
If parents have questions this summer, we do have a summer team in. They can answer questions. We do have a lot of the case management broken up, so we can let you know who that case manager is. They won't be in. Most of them won't be back until school starts, obviously, but between the summer team and Cheryl and I, we can answer those questions for them. So please give us a call.
What's the best way of communicating, like via?
Email, phone, either way.
Can we somehow put out to our special education, families with special education students, those contact?
Sure.
That contact information, so that way they know who to contact?
And yeah, absolutely. And Cheryl and I in the summer team, we've been fielding questions all summer. Parents have been calling. So we are having an ongoing dialogue with parents and speaking to them on a regular basis.
Yeah, Dr. McKay, if you could break that down, like high school, there for the summer, Glen Meadow, which case managers all the way down.
Sure.
And then their emails, their names, their specialty, and their phone number, and then same for Mr. Kendler and Mrs. Von Salzen, so that way parents would know exactly who to contact throughout the summer.
It sounds like this parent is new to the district, so it might be just easier for her to go to btsd.com and find their emails through the special ed.
Yeah, but if she's new to the district, she may not know all their names.
Right, but at least she can go to special ed, get a hold of somebody and kind of go from there, rather than, we can't get the information to her.
But even providing that, but see, that's what I'm saying, it's already the 30th, and that information should be out to parents already, like they should be able to have that information so that they know.
Well, where will that be posted? The information that we just chatted about?
We'll post it on the website, but we'll make sure we get in touch with Ms. Appleby anyway. I mean, for a new parent, you know, one question, one phone call can probably answer a lot of those questions, but we'll reach out to her tomorrow and make sure that she has what she needs.
Thank you. The next question or comment is from Linda Kroger Wilson of Highland Lakes. Any discussion about all virtual with childcare only in the school, and those kids could do virtual with some assistance in that setting?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. The comment is, any discussion about all virtual with childcare only in the school, and those kids could do virtual with some assistance in that setting?
I guess that's a question, like,
Or
was there any
suggestion,
question?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, we had some discussion about it. That's not a model that we've proposed as part of the reopening plan. One of the challenges we would face is staffing that childcare, right? I mean, the reality is that we'd be teaching virtually under, I think, Linda's proposed question. If I'm understanding right, we'd be teaching virtually, so everybody would be teaching a full-time job. And then we'd also have to somehow staff the building socially distanced with enough people with the appropriate supervisory certifications to supervise children in an educational space. So I don't think
With
it's
all the
possible.
hygiene and
Yeah.
specifications that.
Yeah, it's not something that we could do based on the size of our district and the current staff that we have.
Thank you. Lori Studley of Highland Lakes. If the entire district decides to go full remote, will the related services still be offered in-house or virtual only? Will it depend on what the state guidelines are?
Lori, that's a terrific question. Lori works for us. That's a
Right.
terrific question.
The question was about related services?
If he closes, if the governor
If the governor
closes,
closes us, everything is virtual. Right? I mean,
Unless
the
they
governor-
make a statement about services.
Correct. Yeah.
And how
It
we can
becomes just
provide
like the
this.
spring, unless there's a caveat, right? Unless the governor says you're all virtual except for. So again, right, do you agree, Mr. Keller? Yeah.
Come on up.
yes, absolutely. If everything's virtual, then we would go virtual as well, unless there's a caveat like they did for ESY,
Right.
where the offer was, there wasn't enough time to do it in like 2 weeks, but now that we have some notice, if that's a caveat given, we would certainly be able to prepare for that. And I'm sure other districts and at the county level, there would be procedures for that, and we would work with them to make sure that we can do that. But that's all hypothetical at this point. But, we want students in for services to the best extent that we can give them, certainly.
And I just want to clarify, at this point in time, and this isn't related to special services, but another part of the comment, at this point in time, school districts in New Jersey don't have the autonomy to say that they want to go fully remote. The
That's
governor is
correct.
requiring a plan
Yeah, I just
from every
reread that
district in
back.
the state that has a in-person component. Is that correct?
Correct. We couldn't choose to go fully virtual if we wanted.
Right, so
Not today.
just to clarify that, that's not
We
really
could
an option.
petition to do that, though.
I'm sorry.
There are other districts that are petitioning to do that.
That may be true. I just know that as of today, we are not permitted to put together an only virtual plan.
Okay.
That could change tomorrow, Kelly. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
There are no other comments coming through, although Mr. Shea did put a note here that I don't believe he has names for everyone, but there are about 30 employees who echoed support for Ms. Smith. So,
Nice. Good.
but that is all the comments. So unless there's any other comments here in the audience or online, we're going to close it to the public. Okay. And move on to item I, Ms. Davino.
Under recommendations, it is recommended that the board approve the following policies, revisions for first reading. Attachment A. There are two attached items for approval on the agenda. The first is P 1648 Restart and Recovery Plan, and the second is R Regulation 5200A, amendment to the attendance regulation.
Okay, Okay, we have a motion for recommendation 1. So Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Bucieri, questions or comments?
So this is a first reading, so we don't need to vote on this, right?
No, we do need to vote. So there's 2 votes for all policies, a first reading and a second reading. So there will be another vote at our next work session on August 3rd, I believe. That is when the policy would go into effect. Jen, I think you're muted. Are you trying to?
Sorry. We vote on these together, these 2 things, like it's one vote for both? Is that what you just said?
Recommendation is recommending them as one motion. If somebody wanted to split the 2, they would have to make a motion to split the question.
Well, I just feel that we're voting on the policy before we vote on if we want to vote yes or no on the plan. So I don't understand like the order that we're voting. Because if we say we voted on the plan and we voted no on the plan, then the policy.
We have to, even if we vote no, the plan is going to go to the county and get approved. We have to have a policy.
If I may address that, may I address that, Justin?
Please.
Kelly, you're right. It's a bit of a catch-22 because the plan requires certain policies. Policies do require board action. The plan technically does not. So I don't know how to advise. If you're going to vote no on the plan, you don't have to vote no on the policy. That does make sense if you were to vote no on the policy. I don't know how to advise you.
So I guess the way I look at it is that I'm going to vote no on the plan because of the reasons I listed before. However, I understand that the governor and the commissioner of education are still going to require a plan to be put in place that meets their guidelines. If that is the case, our policies should be reflective of our practices. And so for a matter of housekeeping, I will vote yes on the policies, but that's really because our hands are being tied by the guidance being put out of the governor's office.
Isn't the restart and recovery plan more generic? Yeah, that's what the reopening plan is. They're 2 different. You're not even. I don't want to say they're apples and oranges, but they're not apples to apples.
It's reflective of the governor's.
Exactly, the guidance.
I think it's
right.
Right. It talks about facilities guidance, screening of students, things like that.
Right.
But
it doesn't talk about blue gold.
Correct.
No, that's where the reopening plan will talk about blue gold.
Yes.
But it does talk about virtual only versus requiring virtual only and in person, which is where we're running into trouble though, right? I mean, that's.
Right, the state plan is requiring that.
We're voting.
Yeah. I mean, it does talk about the requirements that the state is imposing on us, but we can't control that.
We cannot support it though.
It doesn't say when we have to have in-person education. It just says that the plan should include something for in-person education.
On the policy?
On the restart and recovery plan. The restart and reopening plan.
On the policy.
It says something like, no, just in the plan itself. It says that the document indicates that there must be a reopening. The reopening must account for resuming in-person instruction. It doesn't say when.
I think that the Commissioner of Education clarified in their guidance that it wasn't going to be optional for September. That his guidance was that and if I'm misinterpreting that,
No, we're up.
please correct me.
But if you think about it, if now all these boards are voting on this and all the boards feel the same way as I do, that they're voting no. And then that sends a message out throughout the state saying, you know what, the boards of education don't feel comfortable with this. So I think by voting yes on this, it's almost like rubber stamping the situation. And I know what you're saying, like if the plan still has to go, and it has to try to be approved, But I think that if we want to send the message that we're talking about, by saying no to both, we're sending that message that we're not feeling comfortable.
Yeah, that's my read too.
I guess
Hold on, I
it does
gotta-
send a message, and my concern is with the possible reality of being out of compliance with the state requirements at that point. And we all know the state controls 35% of our budget, so I don't know that that's a risk that I want to take,
I have a comment.
and see.
If the board votes no on the plan, Justin, you said it very well. We three central office administrators have an obligation to get a plan to the county. You may vote no on that plan, and we will still get that to the county and implement the plan. However, if you vote no on the policy and we go forward and implement the plan, we are now going against our own board's policy. And that puts us in a very tough position.
I guess at that point, we're saying to the administration, either you have to be out of compliance with what the governor is requiring of you, or you have to be out of compliance with your local governing body, which is a quite unprecedented situation.
But if we are trying to make a statement, as Kelly said, I think that's the way you make it.
And this is a state mandated policy, and we've had other policies that were state mandated, and it's required that the district follow that state mandated policy regardless of whether or not the board adopts it or not, correct?
Would you repeat the question, Mike?
Oh, yeah, state law and regulation always trumps
Yes.
policy.
I have a suggestion, if I may. Why don't we table the policy? Because we hold on, we have time to vote first reading and second reading on policy before September, but vote on the plan so that we can get it to the county in time.
Well, it's got to go to the county no matter what.
You're avoiding the inevitable at that point.
They're independent of each other anyway.
Yeah, the state's going to require certain things of us at the end of the day. So we could say all we want, we don't want to do this, but state regulation is going to rule the day.
Well, that's why I assume, Justin, that's partly why you suggested you would vote yes on the policy. And I'm not holding to you. I think that was part of your justification.
Right. That's where I stand.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Or any other motions on the table? Okay, seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Okay, Mrs. Coghlan.
Oh, I knew it. I was like, I'm going to be first. We're on policy.
Yes.
I want to say pass, and then we'll go back. Yeah, I always wish I could. Problem is, this is going to trump regardless, so I'm going to go with a no.
Mrs. Mitchell.
No.
Dr. Peak.
Yes.
Ms. Pellet.
So I missed my chance to split this between the policy and the attendance, right? I guess I could just.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I meant to motion that we split the attendance, which I do support, and this, but since I can't do that anymore, I vote no.
Okay. Mr. Sparta.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Mr. Annunziata.
For the policy, yes.
Mrs. Bucieri.
Yes.
Motion does carry.
Thank you.
Okay, sweating it out here, kids. So, Mr. Vino, you're up, number 2.
Right, it is recommended that the board approve the district reopening plan executive summary, attachment B.
We have a motion for recommendation 2. Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Coghlan, questions or comments?
I'd like to comment that, Vicki Smith really wrote a powerful statement. I know it spoke to me. She made a lot of valid points. However, there are no guarantees in life, and that would be my only reply to that. And life is always about making trade-offs, evaluating costs and benefits. I will vote yes for the reopening plan because I think the central office and administrators and teachers did a tremendous job in trying to put this together in the safest way that they can possibly do under the lack of or whatever guidance you might suggest we received from the state. So if the state is requiring us to have some sort of in-person instruction, I have full faith in this particular reopening plan to send my own children back to school, given the safety protocols and the work and effort in the instructional plans that everyone put together.
So I'd like to just clarify that I agree with the administration and the entire team involved did a phenomenal job trying to make a great and made a great plan for the parameters that they were given. But I can't support this. I do support what Vicki Smith wrote, and that we should advocate and use everything in our power to change those, to get the state to change its requirements and go fully remote for the near term until we can really reopen safely for our educators and our students and their families. So
I agree that we have to acknowledge and thank the central office administration for how much they have done and how much all the people who have worked in the many committees and up to this point and what they have done. It's just been a phenomenal amount of work. The VTSD has been transparent and has actively and continuously, shared out to our community throughout this reopening process. Even last weekend, I had an opportunity to see numerous people who favorably commented on the plans and how much how much information Vernon has distributed, and that the efforts have been very proactive and transparent, and they appreciated that, and that was understandandly it was very nice to hear from parents. I do appreciate that, and I agree that it has been quite a tremendous and favorable effort on the part of the administration. As many of you know, I have several adult children, and some of whom are teachers in other districts, and the manner in which Vernon has navigated this pandemic is really something that we should be very proud of. Unfortunately, the state has mandated that the school district develop a plan that calls for in-person learning, and it's not. I agree with Vicki Smith. I agree with the number of people who have mentioned that it's just not safe, and I just cannot support sending teachers and students and staff back at this point in time, and so I cannot support the plan.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, I'd like to echo as well, but, to thank the families, students, faculty, staff, administration. This was not an easy feat by any means, and everyone involved in our school community, but this is just frustrating to use parent work. That's a perfect word to use in this situation. But thank you to everybody. All of your efforts are not going unnoticed by any means, so thank you all very much.
Can I just add one other thing? I just think that these two things are not mutually exclusive, right? We may have to go back in person as a directive by the state. However, we as a community and we as a board can advocate as best we can for online instruction. So I definitely see people's reasoning behind not wanting to go back. And it's certainly a concern as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm not going to support the reopening plan, mainly because I don't know how we can develop a reopening plan when we don't know who's coming in, whether it be teachers or students. So for that, I'm not supporting it. I think I made my position clear throughout the meeting, but I really am going to reiterate and be 100% clear that this is not a vote against the work of Ms. Davino or her team. I believe that they've done an incredible job, especially compared to many of the districts in the surrounding area. I think that you've gone far above the requirements that are set forth by the state. I think that you have exceeded expectations in terms of communication with our community and transparency throughout the process. This is a vote against the objectives that are set forth by the governor's reopening guidelines, which do not meet the health, safety, or educational standards that I set for myself as a board member on this Board of Education. So.
That was really well said. I echo that 100%. And I thank the administration. I think they've done a fabulous job. And the reopening committee spent tireless hours. And I feel bad in my no vote, but for that reason. But I do believe that it's the right thing to do. And I do believe that it's the right message to send by saying that we don't feel 100% safe. And I think that a yes vote would be saying that I felt 100% safe in sending those teachers and those students back. And I can't say that I do. So that is the reason why I was.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay. Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Yes. Mrs. Mitchell.
No.
Dr. Peak.
Yes.
Ms. Pellet.
No.
Mr. Sparta.
No.
Mr. Sweeney.
No.
Mr. Annunziata.
No.
Mrs. Bucieri. And Mrs. Coughlin.
No.
The motion does not carry. So, Ms. Davino, if I may suggest, in the name of lobbying the county/state, when we send in the plan, we can put on the cover letter a copy of the board resolution just so they see the board's response to the state guidelines.
If that's what you feel is appropriate, that's fine. I mean, the state is not asking whether or not the plan was approved.
Okay.
The plan we've presented over the last 3 weeks, out of transparency, like Mr. Sweeney said. If you feel we want to send something to the DOE saying that it failed, I think it should be saying that it failed for the reasons that
Yes.
we want to reflect what our Board of Education feels, that they feel that, and I don't know, just to encapsulate what the conversation was, there hasn't been enough guidance, direct guidance from the state. They haven't provided enough support for local districts to open schools safely. And I don't want it to reflect poorly in our district. That's the only concern I have, Steve.
Very good. Understood.
It seems like it's an incredible time when the Board of Education doesn't approve something and it gets implemented anyway.
Doesn't approve something in what?
And it gets implemented anyway.
Has to implement it anyway. Yeah, exactly. It's a crazy time.
We'll see. There's still a few weeks.
Shall we go on?
Yes.
I'm not certain how this ended up on the agenda,
Okay,
to be
yes.
honest.
So for item 3, it was, Mr. Sparta reminded us that the Athletics Hall of Fame was approved back in December. However, at this point in the agenda, Mr. Sparta wanted to share some thoughts on the Athletics Hall of Fame with us.
Yeah, we met a couple, might have been a month ago now. We actually cast the votes for the first class to be inducted into the BTHS Athletics Inaugural Hall of Fame. Dr. McKay mentioned it last week. And since we would take some time to vote on this, I wanted to share some things about the class that was inducted. We inducted 8 athletes, 2 coaches, and 2 people who had an impact on the athletics at the high school. The athletes were Kathy Bass, who was class of 91. Kathy was an outstanding softball player, but even much better field hockey player. I believe she is the first field hockey player who went to a Division I school out of Ball State and played out there for 4 years as well. Dan Murray, class of 84, he was a outstanding track athlete and also an outstanding football player. He went on to East Stroudsburg University, and he was a linebacker there, and he was drafted in 1988 by Buffalo Bills. And I believe spent 6 or 8 years in the NFL. And 4 of those years were on the 4 losing Buffalo Bills Super Bowl teams. Sorry, Dan, if you're listening. Chris Pete was an outstanding goalie, great basketball player, and in his early years, an outstanding catcher in the Little League here in town. He played on numerous U.S. national soccer teams. After here, he went to NC State, where he played soccer for NC State, and now he's currently an associate coach out at University of Denver girls soccer team. Kathy Stone, class of 80, was a tremendous runner, cross country and track, and is still in town. Actually owns one of the daycares. I believe it's down someplace Special Square. Gail Warner was the first athlete in basketball to score 1,000 points in the school. She was class of 85. She was also a tremendous field hockey player, a tremendous softball player. I can actually remember when she was 11 or 12 years old, pitching in a Little League baseball game and striking out boys like you not believe. I remember it like it was yesterday. Lisa Parrick, class of 87, outstanding athlete, was actually a goalie on the first girls soccer team that was formed here in the school. But a tremendous shot put, disc and javelin, I believe all 3. She went on to Clemson and had an astounding career at Clemson in track. Ryan Olson, class of 84, he was a tremendous swimmer. Some actually thought he had a lot of Olympic potential. 16 years later, some of his records still stand at the state level. Unfortunately, his life was tragically cut short about 10, 12 years ago by a car accident. Dan Michaels, class of 79, football player, actually played in the North-South football game at the Meadowlands back in like 78. But he was a state champion in wrestling. And I think he was the first one that we had for wrestling. So he actually came back and helped out the wrestling program for a few years and is actually in the district subbing.
Yes, you see him all the time.
The 2 coaches are 2 rock star coaches, Stephanie Costadello, who coached field hockey and track, tremendous supporter of her athletes, and turned out incredible track teams year after year with the help of somebody like Lisa Parrick as well. Bob Trench was a softball coach and swimming coach. He was very instrumental back in the 70s and 80s. All the lake communities had private swim teams, and they all competed against each other. He was very instrumental in the Vernon Valley swim team. I think it was called the Aquadens, if I remember right. And he was the first swimming coach we had, and produced. God, there was over 100 kids on those teams.
Absolutely.
And
league championship as the league champion.
The 2 people who were nominated for Impact or inducted for Impact. One was my father, Gary Sparta. He was a product of Vernon Schools, going to McAfee School, leaving there in 59 and going to Hamburg. Went to East Stroudsburg. Came back, was the first phys ed teacher hired in Vernon in 1968. And was the first athletic director and was a charter member of the group of athletic directors that formed the old SCIL. Developed a lot of programs here in the school. Retired January of 95, I believe. I think he's a pretty good guy. And the last was Christian Michaels. Christian was class of 1979. Just an absolutely amazing person. Had cerebral palsy. Was the manager of football and baseball team. That was actually baseball coach, and Chris was the manager for him. He had such an impact on the sports that there was a award created in his honor, Chris Michaels Award. Later, Tommy Martino added to it. or given to people who had a ton of school spirit, and maybe didn't have the abilities to play sports, but still had an impact on all athletics in the high school. So we're proud of this class. Probably about 30 of us are part of the committee on it. And we're planning on doing an induction hopefully in October at a football game, and then a buffet brunch for all the inductees and their families the next day, obviously, depending on what happens with COVID and stuff. So, thank you for your time, and thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we move on?
Please.
Number 4, it is recommended that the board approve the following faculty, staff resignations, retirements, terminations, leaves, transfers, assignment changes, appointments, stipends, salary adjustments, teaching mentoring as listed. There's a table there.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 4? Move. Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Jerry, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Dr. Peak,
Yes.
Ms. Pellet,
Yes.
Mr. Sparta,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Annunziata,
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri,
Yes.
Mrs. Coughlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5, it is recommended that the board approve the following staff members to conduct curriculum work related to blended learning and the scheduling needs for the reopening plan. Dana Cook and Virginia Vanderbeck at Cedar Mountain.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 5? Move. Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Coughlin, questions or comments?
There's like 3 seconds on that one. That's amazing.
Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Ms. Pellet. Oh, I saw yes, but I didn't hear you. Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Annunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Coughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vanda, do you have anything else?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may I add one more recommendation under approvals regarding Dr. Fisher?
Yes.
Just as a reminder, we've been relying more so on the district physician, Dr. Fisher, during our plan to set things up. I know Kathy Toth, our head nurse, and other nurses, Chuck as well, myself, have been reaching out to him. We're hitting him with many questions. So I'd like to recommend an increase in his annual pay, stipend, if you will, in the total amount of $7,500.
Can we have a motion for the recommendation? Move. Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Coughlin, questions or comments? Steve, just for clarification, how long has Dr. Fisher been with the district?
Oh, almost 30 years, I believe. I've been here 11. He's been here at least that long, and his letter he referenced to me the past 30 years. So,
And there's never been an increase in his rate?
as far as I know, that's correct.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Did we have a motion in a second?
Yes, Mr. Sparta and Ms. Coughlin.
Okay. So, Mr. Sparta,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mr. Annunziata,
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri, Mrs. Coughlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Dr. Peak,
Yes.
and Ms. Pellet.
Yes.
Just for clarification, if I may, Ms. Butcher, I didn't hear you well. That you voted no? Is that correct?
I said yes.
Oh, you said yes. I'm sorry. I'm glad I asked.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Item J.
Okay. So regarding meetings, I just wanted to have a brief discussion with the board on virtual, in-person, the hybrid meeting, and the expectations of the board as we move forward.
So,
As far as
yeah.
when we should have meetings?
Yeah, so we've had a few different meeting formats over the last 6 months. We were back in March, still meeting in person, the entire board here. At that point in time, we were not taking public comments through the live stream. That was before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we moved to completely virtual meetings. And on the advice of our attorney, we're still open to public comments, of course, as a public body. So we took comments through the YouTube live stream. Now we're in a hybrid format where we're making it work so that we can meet in person as much as possible and have members of the public who wish to be here and view our meetings here in person with us. And if you can't, we've been taking your comments still through the live stream. But we never have, as a board, fully discussed how we want to operate our meetings going forward. So we should have some sort of a consensus as a collective body on how our meetings are going to be structured for the at least foreseeable future.
Starting when?
Like I said, August.
I think the format we've been using has worked well, so I think we should continue it until things change.
I think we're setting a precedent here by continuing to allow public comment through the live stream when we didn't do it pre-COVID. We discussed it, previous boards have discussed it, about allowing chat, questions through the chat room. And the previous boards didn't want to have that happen. Last week and the week before, we did have some people sign on with some screen names and said some inappropriate things on the live stream. I think if we continue to live stream or continue to take public comment through the chat room, I believe we are setting a precedent, and we do not have a policy that says that. We are in a situation now where, 2 weeks ago we had, 20 or 30 people here who came and were in a large room. And we can have, I think another board member said, public can reach out to our administration at any time for questions or comments. And I would make the move to not allowing any more comments coming in through the chat room, just because we have not done that pre-March and we don't have a policy for that. And I think we're setting a precedent now that we could have meetings in person if we continue that.
I've never understood, since we've started live streaming, why we allow comments in general. I don't even think we should allow comments just when there even wasn't us meeting in the hybrid model. These meetings are conducted as official business. We're live streaming on technology that is paid for by taxpayer dollars. And if people are making comments, and I don't mean public comments, I just mean any comment, I don't understand why those don't become part of the record, because it's all done during the official business. This is the official business of the board at the moment. So any of those comments should be getting put into what's said. That's separate. But now my thoughts on comment of hybrid versus, in person. What I am thinking is we as a board are offering as a choice to our own board members to be online or to be here. So if we are the highest leadership in this school district, And we're offering for our own members to be hybrid for whatever reason, no judgment whatsoever. I was on Zoom a few weeks ago myself. That I do believe right now, as long as we offer that option to our own board members, we should also offer it to the public. Because I also think it would be hypocritical in a sense that the whole reason we met tonight was to discuss hybrid versus all virtual. So if we aren't offering that to our own public, but we're offering it to our families for their children, I don't think that that's fair right now. But I agree with Brad that we don't have a policy updating, so I agree with having the discussion tonight so we can update our policy. But what I think we should do is just in general not allow any comments unless the president states, however the president chooses, but let's say public comment opens up, I'm gonna make an example. So if public participation is H, and maybe around E, the president says, starting now, 7:15, we will accept online comments. But any comment that is written goes into the public record. And then that way people, we're not sitting here, twiddling our thumbs, which we had to do understandably. Then whenever the president opens that window, because of the COVID situation right now and allowing that flexibility, then whatever is written is read aloud. And then when the public participation is over, then that's it. The comments are turned off. That's what I'm thinking.
Comment section on
The comment section for the public participation.
Like we did it today.
Is that what we did?
That's what we did today.
Yeah, we only took comments once the public comment section.
Right, then it's over. So like if someone leaves a comment right now at this moment, then that is not read at the very end of the public participation. But if the president opens it, you may now send in your comments for K, public participation, then I'm fine with that for right now. And then if we all come back and there's no more online or hybrid, unless let's say someone's on a business trip, one person and they want to join us, I still think we should be then taking public comment. But then since we're doing this hybrid, I'm flexible for hybrid comments.
Yeah, I hear Brad's concern about some of the inappropriate comments that were made on the YouTube live stream. That's not okay. And we should be in compliance with our policy, and we should update our policy to reflect the changing practices in the district in light of the pandemic. I just want to make sure that we're still accessible to the members of the public who might be medically compromised, elderly, have to quarantine because they were traveling out of state. I don't want them to not be able to comment at our board meetings because of a circumstance that may be beyond their control in the current pandemic.
But they can do that during appropriate timeframes.
Right. Depending on how the board decides to move forward.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with the hybrid of the meetings, although I find it interesting that we can have a choice of hybrid meetings, with the Board of Ed. The students, the parents get a choice whether to do virtual or in person. Yet the teachers are the only ones that really don't get that choice. I just find that interesting, just as a side note. So.
Where does everybody else stand on the issue of future meetings and public comments?
I agree with what Teresa suggested. I think that would work. I do think that there's nothing really wrong with continuing this, allowing questions during designated periods after we return to more normalcy. I just think it's good for the public to have access to us, and we are serving families, so some of them can't come to meetings for whatever reason. I mean, if you have young kids and you don't have another parent at home, you can't physically attend a meeting. So it's kind of a nice thing that we've opened an avenue for people who can't attend in person to ask questions, to my mind. I think that gives them more access to us and gives us more insights.
I don't disagree with what Judy said, and I understand what you're saying, Jen, but the purpose of the public comment section isn't really, it's for public comment. There's access to administrators, to principals, to teachers. It's a different thing. That the board meeting is to conduct the business of the board. I think we really do a great job of answering our constituents, our teachers, our parents' questions, above and beyond than really I think what typically would happen. So I understand maybe limiting it at that point while we're doing this hybrid, but once we go back to our regular meetings and hopefully we don't have to do this anymore, we can all meet in person and then not have, of course we're gonna live stream, we're always gonna live stream our meetings like we have, but cut off the comments and really need to just button that up right now and make sure you don't go through what you went through that first meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I understand there's a lot, there's a lot going on. And there were some repetitive comments, but I'd rather be more accessible, or more transparent with the public than less. But I agree, we should tighten the process and make our policy reflect the intention or their practice of the board.
Well, I think we're very accessible. I think our district is very accessible. I think we're very transparent. I'm proud of our district for that. So I agree, but
I think
tighten that up.
I think when we look at the policy, we actually talked about members calling in or videoing in even before COVID. Yeah. We actually had that conversation, and we talked about policy then. And I think that's a great idea because we have had in the past where there may be an important meeting where something was going to be discussed and voted on. The member was away; they didn't have a chance to participate in the meeting. And if the resolution ended up being, or vote ended up being a 4-4, that person's an important part in that process. And I think that's a good idea to do in the future to have people call in. But I do think it should be limited. We have a similar policy to this at Sussex World for the board of directors. We are only allowed to call in twice a year. After that, you cannot call in and you don't get to participate. So we only meet once a month over there. So we meet twice a month here. I think if we had a policy where members were allowed to call in 4 times a year, I think that's more than acceptable. And then it gives you a chance to participate in 4 meetings that you wouldn't have a chance to participate in before.
I'm not opposed to that by any means. I just wouldn't want to put the limit on it until after.
No, don't talk about after.
Yeah, once things go back to normalcy.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think so too.
Because the point is to be here in person, obviously, normal situation, the point is to be committed and to be here in person.
Mike or Joe, do you want to weigh in on what direction you feel we should go with meetings and public comments?
As long as we're in the hybrid mode, I think we need to take, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, Mike, you're go ahead. You got the floor.
I think as long as we are doing the hybrid mode, then we need to take public comments in the recommendations that have been discussed earlier, where it's a limited time frame. In my case, I'm not there tonight because I am following the state quarantine rule or recommendation, and so I'd hate to be penalized for that, but I understand that the purpose is to have an in-person meeting and discussion. It's going to be interesting to see how all this sort of plays out with a long-term meeting format. So I do like the option, like Brad said, to be there for important discussions virtually. So I would still like to have that option open.
I absolutely agree with Mike. I mean, we've been doing business rather well the past few months with this virtual and hybrid manner, and I think it's a great option. People get very intimidated talking in front of the Board of Ed, and maybe if they have the online option, they can be more comfortable with approaching us, which we should encourage. Although I may not look like it, I am meeting one of those high risk categories, and that's why I choose, to stay home and go online. I'm sure I don't look like it.
Can I
That's
ask
it.
Matt, can the chat room be turned on during the meeting at some point in time rather than being on all the time? Matt, how does that work, Matt?
I've never tried it midstream. I know I kind of get a choice beforehand to turn it on or off. I could play with it.
Because I think then that's something that works, because if Matt is monitoring, which, I mean, part of this is Matt's been doing all these comments for the last 2 or 3 weeks here. And, you know, he already does a lot for us above and beyond. And we put more on him to continue it. Where if he has an opportunity to go ahead and sees public comment coming up, turn the chat room on, say open for public comment, and then close it when it's done, I think that would eliminate it also. I understand a lot of people have been making the comments during the presentations, and then their question may have been answered later, and then, but we still got to read the comment, and it's like it's a vicious circle. So if that's something that we could do, where we can turn it on during the meeting, that would be better.
It's something that, you know, we should definitely look at. So what I'm seeing as some sort of a consensus is that the board agrees that policy should reflect practice. We should update the policy at least temporarily to extend the public comment section to YouTube while we're under the current pandemic, and that we should revisit it or pull back on that when we resume some normalcy. Steve, I know that you said in speaking with Strauss, our policy provider, when we were talking the other day, you said they recommend making amendment policies as opposed to simply doing changing the policy, because if it's something you're going to repeal later, you can just repeal the amendment on the policy.
I think you can actually, Steve, I believe on an amendment, you could put an expiration date on it.
The board, there's no, it would be your amendment, so certainly you could do that.
So you can say through January 2021 or through March,
And then you could always add.
and it can be revisited at that time.
Sure, yes.
So, all right, so we should work on some verbiage for policy for the August work session on public comments, and on the board member attendance piece. We'll revisit that after the pandemic and just continue our meetings in a hybrid format for the time being.
Well, I think you can do that board member attendance piece now, because it's more for after the pandemic than what it is now. You could put in the amendment, you could put in not only about the public comment, but about also doing a hybrid meeting. And then once that amendment expires, so does the hybrid meeting format.
That's true.
They kind of go hand in hand.
Right. All right, so we will have a motion on the agenda in August to update our policies to reflect the current practice, and I'm glad that we had this conversation.
If I may, I have one question regarding your meetings. I know we're doing very well with the hybrid, and we have it set up for social distancing in the cafeteria at the high school because of there's so much space. Does the board continue in this location? Because if you do, I need to re-advertise the meeting, because the last time we advertised it at the Lounsbury Hollow Library. I'd like to send out another advertisement to clarify that.
I think that this room is the biggest air-conditioned space that we have that can allow for Matt to have all his equipment set up. So is everybody in favor of staying here?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell Colleen she can ever have her cafeteria back. We're keeping it. And that's it.
They're not using it for Monday right now, so.
All right. Item
Very good.
A.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. A, public participation for items on the agenda or other business. If members of the public who are in the audience would like to come forward and make a comment, please step forward and state your name and town. And if you are on the live stream, please submit comments at this time if you would like those read into the record.
Okay, Vicki Smith again. Do I have to repeat it all? Okay. I just want to provide you with the phone number to contact the governor, which is 609-292-6000, or you can email him at nj.gov to express your displeasure at his, I would say, inaction right now, and the lack of him looking at this situation in any type of reality and forcing our board and our administration to make very tough decisions based on little guidance or no guidance, and it's a little disheartening. So I know there is a grassroots, it's late, I'm tired, a movement to contact him and let him know the displeasure that we are feeling, and we want him to make a decision, not just sit on. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Vicky, I don't know if you're aware or not, there is a bill in assembly.
It has been presented in assembly. It has not passed assembly. Yeah, as of the last I heard, it didn't even have a number.
I thought you were aware of it, but.
Yeah,
It was proposed, but it hasn't.
yeah, it hasn't been even given a number yet, so I'm on it.
Anybody who's here in the audience tonight? Any other comments? Thank you to those who are in the audience for coming for 3 weeks in a row. Matt, how are we doing on?
Justin, I'm sorry, the group together that and this is a problem with me moderating, that I lumped together asked that their comments be read separately. So I copied and pasted them all in. So below that dashed line, you'll see those comments.
Okay, so these were all submitted. Where am I?
Starting with Barb Munchauer.
Okay, I see. Comment is from Barbara Monschauer. Please know that teachers spent many, many hours creating videos, conferences, and lessons last spring, and many of us are creating videos, puzzles, Google Slides, Quizlets, etc. for lessons for the fall. We want the children to have the best learning experience no matter where they are, home or school. We truly care about your children. And thank you, Mrs. Monschauer. She's a wonderful teacher in our district.
Yes, she is.
The next comment is from Valerie Kammerer of Highland Lakes. When the district is ready for 5 live days at the end of marking period 1, will there be alternating A/B groups on a weekly basis? Will groups be integrated into one classroom?
One classroom.
I'm not prepared to commit to anything right now.
No. I'm saying it in the plan if we were to bring it back. But again, we keep saying
Yeah,
we have to be flexible.
I would agree with Chuck. That's where our minds are. But at this point, I don't think we can say anything. That's why it's November.
Thank you. The next comment is from Samantha Cavey. Thank you, Vicki, for voicing our concern. The next comment is from Bethany Konopinski. Thank you, Vicki. We stand with the VTEA. Aaron Kitis. Well said, Vicki. We stand with the VTEA. Adam Romano. Thank you, Vicki. We stand with the VTEA. Donna Dill. Thank you, Vicki. Couldn't have said it better myself. Pete McCotter. Well said, Vicki. The people coming up with this plan are working so hard and coming up with good ideas, but the charge they were given was close to impossible. I agree. Jacqueline Havington. Thank you, Vicki. I would much rather see my students in person, but only when it's safe. We stand in unity as VTEA. Julie Franklin. Thank you, Vicki. I support the VTEA's position. Marty Staudinger, support VTEA. June Kuhn. I support the VTEA's position and appreciate everyone's efforts. Pamela Reed. Thank you, Vicki, for expressing our concerns. As faculty, I support the VTEA's position. William Panfili. Thank you, Vicki. We stand with the VTEA. Allison Pringle. Thank you, Vicki. I agree with the VTEA's position on reopening. Cynthia Monaco. Thank you, Vicki. I support the VTEA's position. Jennifer Souza. Thank you, Vicki. I support the VTEA's position. Mike Wilson. Thank you, Vicki. I support the VTEA's position. I hope all of these comments are read for the BOE tonight. Barbara Monschauer, thank you, Vicki, for sharing our safety concerns. VTEA cares about our students. Mark Pisco, the Piscos support the VTEA. Our state is not ready for a reopening plan that provides student and faculty a safe working environment. Thank you, Vicki and BOE. Thomas Ligaitis, Thank you, Vicky. We support the VTEA's position. Stacy Blanco. Thank you, Vicky. I support the VTEA's position. Marjorie Cobley. I support the VTEA's position. Jennifer Crott. Thank you, Vicky. I support the VTEA's position. Ann Larley. Thank you, VTEA. I support our membership's position on a halt to reopening in September. Yvonne Valdez. Thank you, Vicky, and I support the VTEA. Tammy DeCesare. Thank you, Vicky. I support the VTEA's position. Scott Berge. Thank you for your leadership, Vicky. I support the VTEA position. Christine Cersei. I appreciate the VTEA's position, but I do not agree. And Scott Berge, since we are ready and prepared to go online immediately if a problem occurs, seeing what the COVID-19 numbers are now nationally, why would we even risk putting student or staff's lives at risk? Oh, sorry, it's a long list. Okay. All time and effort is spent with online learning. Why not utilize it from the start? Be the board to take a stand and say we will not open until the safety of all can be assured. That was Scott Berge. Allison Guilfoyle, why would special services personnel be exposed to COVID-19 when the remainder of personnel be able to work from home? Anna Larley, I wonder if the BOE has toured the buildings to see what work or lack of work has been completed or even started in the district. Oh, yeah, during open board member forum, I think, or do you want to speak to it at this point?
Well, we are doing a buildings and grounds meeting on Tuesday, and we will be touring all the schools. And we will give a report back.
And that's something you've been doing with your committee for the last year.
The last year, we have toured all the schools as a committee and documented anything that we feel needs repairs or questions. And Mr. Kepnes has been instrumental in that. So thank you, Mr. Kepnes, for that.
Thank you. And Martin Peringer, in view of the last vote, could the board make a resolution in view of the state mandate imposed on us? We want it to be known that we feel schools should only be open for in-person when certain conditions are met. And the last comment I'm seeing here is from Peggy Mitchell. Thank you, Vicki and the VTEA. I support all your hard work. Matt, are there any other comments coming through?
That was just the last one.
That was the last one. So seeing no other comments, I will close it to the public. Thank you to everybody who took time to comment in person or through the live stream tonight. Item L, open board member forum.
I will not be at the August 13th meeting since I have to move my daughter down to South Carolina unless the quarantine thing is removed from South Carolina. I won't be attending. I don't think I'm going to call virtually either.
Thank you.
Very excited about graduation this week. And we had a student life meeting and discussed all the nuances about what's going to happen with graduation. It was a huge undertaking. I thank all the administration from the high school, especially Dr. Anderson, who we've, during student life, had changed course a bunch of times and asked a lot of questions, and she's always been very kind and forthcoming. So I really do appreciate that, and we're super excited to have an in-person graduation this week, along with our 8th graders as well.
And I'd also like to thank again the students at the high school who are in sports. They're a few weeks in. And a very big thank you again to the families who are bringing their students, their own children, our student athletes, and also to our coaches. Having coached myself on a good year is hard, so I give them so much credit for doing it this year. But so thank you very much to the coaches, to our athletic director, and to all of our student athletes and everybody involved in the sports program, because again, that's another piece of the reopening. component. But it's really nice to see the kids there. They're happy, and that's really what you want to see. You want to see happy students, you know, they're getting together. It's not easy under any situation here, but to send out a thank you to all of them for doing the sports and to let them know that they're definitely valued, and so is their time. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our third meeting this month, and I just want to say, you know, in addition to your day jobs, Matt, Chuck, Steve, and especially Karen, you guys are have been here and been ready for the board for more than 15 hours of meetings in 3 weeks.
You were counting the hours?
I mean, it was easy, but yeah, it was. But you know, I appreciate you guys being here for the board and for the community during a really difficult time. I think we've heard it from our faculty and from parents how concerned they are about the school year and the impact it's going to have on their children and on their health and on their education. So it really means a lot that you guys are here and willing and able.
There's a lot of other people behind the scenes that have worked tirelessly. Obviously, our dedicated faculty, our administrators, Russ and Vinny, everybody has worked tirelessly. Our school nurses, our physician. I mean, it has been a Herculean effort. I wish that we could put forth a plan that was better for our students, right? Because what we've been given is what we've been given, and you know, we've talked about it tonight. So I wish we could put together something that was the right fit for everybody. Unfortunately, the state really hasn't given us much to work with. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Okay, seeing none, can we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Cherry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.